little crazy.
Crazy.
Just for what it's worth, Sergeant Travis O'Neill is not here tonight. And he's not because unfortunately there was a bad accident on Third Avenue Bridge. You folks may be aware of a plane came down. So he's just called again. He's not gonna make it for sure. He's blocking traffic, but he said the chief will stop by. The chief is gonna stop him real quickly. Because again, obviously there's issues. The moment he comes in, we're gonna just stop what we're doing and just give him a few minutes if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Why don't we start officially? This is the, hey, Jim. This is the welcome to the Marine Advisory Board meeting for Thursday, April 4th, 2024. Thank you all for coming. Let's have a roll call if you don't mind.
Absolutely. James Harrison,
Here.
Chair White Clinton.
Here.
Barry Flanagan,
Here.
Norbert McLaughlin,
Here.
John Lynch,
Here.
Robin Shirley, Tyler Burnell,
Here.
Noel Norville. Here. Robert Franks,
Here.
I know Mr. Walker's not here, Brewster Knott. Elizabeth George. Here. Robert Washington,
Here.
Ed Reholes,
Here.
and Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Do you have a quorum, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you very much. We do have a new member. We tease, we call him the new guy. The new guy is Jason Dunbar, who's kind enough to join us. Jason, from what I've been able to steal off the internet, is a yacht broker at
Oh,
Oak
shit.
Brown. And if you don't mind, just stand up and tell us a little bit
Thanks.
about it.
Yep, Jason Dunbar. I've moved into this area in the early 1996. Bought my first boat, been cruising these canals, Middle River, New River, North Fork, South Fork, ICW, down to the Keys. My kids went to school by boat to Bayview and then Fort Lauderdale High, on a 13-whaler. I am really embedded in the aquatic end of this. I owned Luke Brown Yachts for many years, good friends with a lot of people in this room. I have been on the board of the MIASF, found that organization incredibly important to this state, and also a board member of the IYBA. So I do have an understanding of the industrial interests of this industry. And as I mentioned, my kids and I play in this water, so I also have a deep concern for the environmental impacts of this industry. And I'm very honored to be on the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So welcome. One of the initiatives that, we talk about is clean water. We are honored to have Dr. Gassman here on a different subject tonight, but we may pick her brain a little bit because I think at one of our last meetings, one of you folks who grew up here reminisced about what it was like growing up and swimming in the canal with porpoises, et cetera. So,
Chief is coming in.
sorry.
Chief is coming in.
So we'd like to see what we can do. I understand the chief is walking in, so we're gonna segue to him.
Hello, everyone.
So-
Wanted to stop by real quick, very quickly. I wanted to give you a briefing about what's going on downtown. This afternoon, we had an officer witness. One of the construction cranes fell apart. One of the construction buildings right next to the southeast Third Avenue drawbridge. Fortunately, a construction worker fell with that and is now deceased on the scene. We have 2 cars that were hit by the falling debris. A couple injuries from that as well. They're at the hospital being treated. One's unstable and one looks to be in good condition. There is damage to the northeast Third Avenue drawbridge span. So that bridge is going to be closed for the foreseeable future. Right now, we are diverting traffic on the basic roads that you would think Andrews and US 1. But it's going to be up to the DOT to determine what the bridge status will be. We do not know if it's affected the ability for the bridge to go up and down at this time. We're waiting on a confirmation on that. There is very likely potentially evidence in the water that we're going to have to recover as well. So with that, I just wanted to give you a very quick, brief, discuss, at least update of what I know and what I can release at this time. We're waiting on OSHA to arrive. This is obviously going to be primarily an OSHA investigation. However, my department will handle the death investigation. So we're already in, processing the death investigation, awaiting OSHA to arrive. But unfortunately, we will not be able to open the Third Avenue Bridge until DOT makes repairs, and advises us that it's safe to do so. With that, I'll just open it up. If you guys have any general questions about that incident.
Safe to say this, Travis had called a couple times, he just called 3 minutes ago, mentioned that he had a neighbor get the chief in and out quick. Mentioned he's sitting there holding on track. So, I want to say in the most polite way, all the years out of our sales with this, we are obviously most concerned about that killed and that are injured. Generally, Travis sits on the end. He is an integral part of what we do. We have a report from him monthly, generally, and I asked him again thoughts about Tortuga Fest coming up and other things. We got the air show coming up. As far as we know, Chief, I'm gonna ask one quick question. We generally get a report that happened last month. The only thing that we saw that was consequence, with due respect, was there was a drowning on the river. Other than that, nothing of consequence.
No.
So you guys are doing a tremendous job. We are so supportive of you, and so supportive of the need to get more folks, more police on the water, to get more equipment, et cetera. So we've invited you here so you know that we hope to be able to work with you. The respect that we have for the team is just endless. We drive you folks crazy on occasion, but we just wanted to make sure we're aligned with you. So we appreciate it.
And while I'm here, real quickly, and then I'll get back to the scene, but I did want to let you know tonight that for those of you that don't know, I've been in the department for 23, going on 24 years now. And I've been disheartened that the Marine unit has dwindled to the point where it is. It is a priority. I had a very extensive meeting with Travis just 2 weeks ago about new equipment, enhancing their equipment. And as soon as I get my manpower to where it needs to be, we currently have 50 vacancies. As soon as I can fill those, I'm going to give him more boat operators, and I want to go to 2 shifts as opposed to 1 as soon as possible. Travis and I believe we're going to shoot for probably 6 or 7 a.m. till at least 1 a.m. So much happens between the hours of 5 and midnight that we need to be there, and we keep relying on the Coast Guard, our sheriff's office, the state officers, and we shouldn't do that. We're too big of a city at this point, growing by the moment. So that's my goal, is to get us 2 shifts immediately. Eventually, I would love to see within 24 months, 24-hour coverage, 7 days a week. And then I'm also going to enhance our dive team. We learned with the most recent drowning that we need better equipment, easily accessible to the dive team on a smaller boat. So we're going to work on getting them their equipment that they need as well. So with all that, I absolutely share your want for a more enhanced Marine unit.
You know what, we all we want is what's best for the community. It's the same for all of us. What about manpower up on the river? You able to get some more folks farther west up on the river?
That will be up to Travis. I always leave deployment to Travis. As we get him more officers, he'll be able to do certainly more of those closer. So he'll be able to do more of those.
So you're gonna get out of here right now. And as we move forward, we obviously have entered the sunshine laws. Is it okay if I or one of our guys reaches out to you and just kind of keep you abreast of what we're doing and touch base with your office?
That's certainly okay. But I prefer, I'm a big stickler for chain of command. And I think Travis is an outstanding representative for my department. And I don't see a need for you to have to reach out directly to me. If you ask Travis to get a message to me, he's probably going to walk out of the room and call me right then. So I would highly recommend going through him, because that always keeps him in the same loop that I'm in. You're always welcome to contact me.
He's a huge friend of ours, and the MAB would like to thank you with a fish M&Ms that say thank you from the MAB. And we're sorry again about what's going on.
I should buy some of these for thank you gifts as well. This is a great idea.
You can't steal my idea.
This is actually
I
a
get
good
out.
snacks. I'm gonna take it. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I'm okay.
The Hudson.
There's it's kind of small. So Chip Lamarca just snuck in. I'm speaking. Nice to see you. We're over the board here, and it's just obviously the accident, et cetera, necessitates it. So thank you for the chief, by the way. I read a lot about him. He's a very interesting guy. He's totally committed to the program here and a big supporter of everything we do. So, it's incumbent upon us to stay in touch with Travis. Barry Flanagan had shared that Travis's phone number has been available to folks out in the river. There was an issue recently with Carrie B, and we said, you know what, pick up the phone and call Travis. So, Marco, I saw you somewhere. Did I see Marco? Did not. So I thought Marco snuck in, but we have Marco's phone number from Code Compliance available. So if there's an issue, what happened the other day apparently on the New River was somebody on a pontoon boat decided that the temporary fencing in front of the river was not meant to block them from tying up. So they decided to move it so they can tie their boat up.
Must be the same people that are tying up to our new
It
fence
didn't
that we
go
have in
well.
our contact.
So Chip Lamarcus here, I'm gonna let Elizabeth, who was kind enough to reach out. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
To ask Chip to join us, he'd be kind enough to.
Right. Well, the reason I reached out to Chip was obviously our New River challenges are not just a city challenge or a county challenge, but they're also a state challenge. And so this is our opportunity to tell him what we're thinking and the like. So first up, I want to thank you for joining us. I just wanted to share a brief introduction. I looked you up online to find out this stuff, so hopefully it's all true. He is somebody that is known for listening to his citizens. I mean, he's been very active. He's come to the Central Beach Alliance to listen to us and the complaints we've had, and he's taken action. I was excited to learn that he was born in Massachusetts because that's where I'm from. I was also excited to find out that he went to BU because I'm an alum from there as well, so which is kind of cool. He went to Broward College and FAU. Guess what? His recreational interests include boating and fishing. So he's very into that. He's worked many years in construction industry, including his own company specializing in power generation. 20 years ago, he started to become very active in public service, serving on many advisory boards up in the city of Lighthouse Point. So he did a lot of what we're doing, volunteering his time. He's held many board positions, been involved in the county, been involved in Florida State Fair Authority, Florida Health Kids Corporation. He's served as the chair of Finance Tax Administration for the Florida Association of Counties. And on the national level, he's been selected to chair the Finance, Pension, and Intergovernmental Affairs Committee for the National Association of Counties. And tons more. This is the list, and notice the size of the font. It's very, very small. Did that on purpose so that everybody would see that. And since 2018, he's been an active member of the Florida House of Representatives with current committee assignments, including chair of Joint Committee on Public Counsel, Republican Committee Whip for Ways and Means Committee, and the member of Infrastructure and Tourism. So this is our opportunity to let him tell us a little bit more about himself, but for us to ask any questions or tell him what we're doing so that he can be a support to us as well.
So that's about 6 years old.
There's a lot more on
Well, there is
there.
a lot.
I would tell you that what you're doing, and based on current rate of pay for a state legislator, we're all volunteers. If you include the 7 hours travel back and forth, but I enjoy representing this community, great community specifically, but all of us as residents and business owners in Tallahassee. One of the things I would just kind of highlight, just finish my 6 year. The reason I went to Tallahassee, and I had this conversation yesterday with somebody. It wasn't because Georgia writers were term limited out, but there was an open position. The reason I went was to continue the work we were doing here in Broward County. I was a county commissioner for 8 years, and really the marine community and the beachy coastal issues were a priority for me. The big beach renourishment project back in 2015 took 20 years to permit that through the state and the federal government. I always used to say, if it took you 20 years to get a permit for your roof when there was a blue tarp on it, you'd be in rough shape. That said, we have similar issues with Port Everglades and permitting and all that. So I took it upon myself to take a different path and go to, and run for the state house back in 2018. And the first bill we ran was coastal management, which was to bring the way we built a beach here in Fort Lauderdale and in well, Broward County, but Fort Lauderdale and Pompano Beach, so the rest of the state can have successful projects. So we passed that bill without a single member opposing it. Eventually got $50 million in recurring funding for beaches. First year I was up there along with that, we were having this conversation. You might be familiar with it. FDOT was, I had an appropriations request for FDOT to do a study on the New River crossing, what it would cost. That was in 2019, I think. Obviously the costs have changed since then, but the issue hasn't resolved itself yet. But this year, specific to the folks who are in this room and the industries, it was the second year I ran a bill for yacht brokers, yacht and ship brokers. To clarify the size of vessels, some of the requirements for brokers, and kind of take it out of the mobile homes and condo section of the Department of Business Professional Regulation and really give it its own identity, and also put some teeth in to protect consumers and that type of thing. The governor has not yet signed that bill yet, but I believe he will. We passed it, and there was no real opposition. It took a couple of years because some of the folks in Tallahassee saw it as additional regulation. But that was a little regulation because we need a category for it, but more importantly, it's also consumer protection, and it's what I think we believe here in the state of Florida. The other bill that was really important, and I see patients here in the room from marine industries, we had a bill that was trying on its with a different member of the House to get passed on the blue economy. Worked with that member this year, filed the bill, and we got it through a couple of committees, and then it unceremoniously died over the Senate, never got heard. And what happens in Tallahassee, sometimes it's not over till it's over. And we worked with the Senate, somebody from Boston through a Hail Mary is good have done. We were able to get it moving in the Senate, attached to the education bill, passed it. The governor has not yet signed the education bill, but I have zero doubt that he will, and it includes the Office of the Ocean Economy, which is going to be focusing on research and development and bringing products to market from that research and data from our universities around the state of Florida. So definitely have an interest in what happens in blue, green, or any other color water in the state of Florida. The governor was here today to sign an environment bill that I don't know if you've read or heard about it yet, but the bill on the environment, what it will do, and the determination was, about the Seminole Tribe, the compact, the gaming compact. I've heard all about that. That's going to put about $675 million a year into the state of Florida's hands. And there was no earmarking or designation where it needed to go. But what we did do is, and I'm not sure the entire amount, but certainly about 500 million of that right now this year is going to be spent on the environment, on Everglades projects, about 100 million on water quality issues, and getting projects done in and around our water environment. So I'm happy to hear that and see that, people coming here and visit the casino or gaming on their phone or however they're doing it, that those dollars go back to our environment, which is important for all of us. So really, I'm here to listen to what you all have going on. I'm happy to. I don't want to hijack your meeting, and I didn't want to run out either. So I'm happy to take some questions if you guys have any specific concerns of what we're doing in Tallahassee. As you might hear from the bio, I do work in Tallahassee, because that's where the legislative process is. But I don't treat that job as I'm, when I'm seen in public. So I don't run from someone's questions. I still act as a county commissioner or a little city commissioner, like Lighthouse Point, because constituents are constituents, whether you represent them in City Hall, county government, Tallahassee, or Washington. They're signing the same ballot. So no matter what level of government you work, to me, it's important to stay dug in on it. So here for questions, and if I don't have the answers, I'm certainly happy to try to go get them for you.
Anybody? Board? Anybody have questions?
Not even Robert.
It's funny, that it often happens, and it's not because it's lack of interest. This is a group that stays abreast with everything's going on. Our dear friend Elizabeth will make sure that we're abreast through Andrew being sensitive to sunshine laws. We're kept abreast of what's going on in Central, particularly on issues with folks like you. So, the lack of question doesn't mean interest. This is a well-educated group. Mr. Fleming.
Board has often talked about quality. Maybe like to see some of that money.
Excuse me, can you speak?
Could
up
you
there?
repeat your question?
Talking about water quality and cleaning up the New River and some of those funds.
Right.
Absolutely. I think the best way to go about that is we know we have a funding source through not just the gaming compact, but other funds that we always have. It's not a political statement, but 2018, when he was a candidate, Ron DeSantis said he was going to spend upwards of $2.5 billion with a B on the environment in the first 4 years. I think we did about 3.7. And a lot of that, quite honestly, was some of it could have been through federal funding, but ultimately a lot of it was beach renourishment post hurricanes. It was trying to clean up algal blooms and contaminated waters and around the state of Florida. So the right now, and we're 2 years into the next 4-year cycle that he's serving as and serving in. And I think we're probably at about 2.5 already. So when the state of Florida is very fiscally responsible with your tax dollars, paying down debt, having a healthy reserve, but also investing in our environment. So to your point, whether it's from one pot of dollars or another, we can certainly highlight that, and I can find out what the state through DEP, the DEP secretary was here today as well, find out through them what is needed and what types of projects would go towards clearing up the river.
Our biggest initiative this year is this concept we call reimagining the river. By the way, folks, the copies of the prints we had last month are out. There were comments that folks had. So we're talking about reimagining the river. So we have post moratorium. We want to kind of make sure that we can ensure the navigability, et cetera, for the families, et cetera. But right below that is clean water. I've heard Barry use a term, he loves to make it blue again. How do we make it blue again? Well, we are fortunate enough to have Dr. Gassman, who I will not put on the spot right now, but we'd love to see if one of our initiatives, if we could work with Dr. Gassman, her team, get some funding, really figure out how to address this. And I don't know what the answer is, but I'd sure like to figure it out before we all move on.
Well, let me share this. I guess he's council chair. Marcelo Sassiola was at this bill signing today. He talked about his grandfather traveling a hollowed out tree, which was a canoe, 40 miles down to Tamiami, capture game, do all these things. And he said the one thing that our goal is in working on the issues with the Everglades and restoring them to not just the design and the form of how the water travels, but everything from the lake, the estuaries, all that. At one point, he said you drank the water in the streams, you could see the bottom of it. And I live real close to Hillsborough Inlet. When you go out on the water, you can see the bottom of the water there. Of course, it's the inlet where you get into canals, where it looks like it's brackish water and all that. But whatever can be done from our perspective and my position, I'm happy to do. The good thing is I sit on the Infrastructure and Tourism Appropriations Committee, which is where a lot of the funding is going to come for really more of the infrastructure stuff. The other piece of it is the Agriculture and Natural Resources Appropriations Committee. That's where our water projects go through, and happy to work with Dr. Gassman. And I know we're lucky to have Dr. Harada with the county. We have some very smart scientists here in our community. The other thing I would just say is we're blessed with a very unique, and a lot of it is human-made, man-made by digging, but we're blessed to have a really amazing waterfront, no matter where we go, but whether it's North Fork and South Fork of the river, intercoastal waterways, whether they were given us by God or we created them, we have a lot of waterfront. And I just, when I talk about these things in Tallahassee, some people kind of have a blank stare, there's a lot there somewhere, and we're having these conversations, but we want to take care of that. So whatever can be done from that stuff.
Jim Harrison.
One thing, do you have any good news or optimism on the coral mitigation and the fort widening issue?
So having an interest in obviously what happens with the port and the widening project. I've been on the last trip we took with the port action team last year on DC in the third or fourth quarter. And, we're at a point where, for those who do or don't know, I think we're mitigating the removal of about 30 or 40,000 corals for the dredge for the inlet, and the replacement model has gone up consistently. But I think the county's scientific offers for their mitigation plan is to put in 600, and then it was 800,000 corals. I think we were at 6 to 8, maybe it was 700,000. But the National Marine Fisheries wants to see us put in between 1 million and 1.2 million corals. I'm not going to say, I'm not a scientist, but I'm also not going to say that they don't exist, but they would take probably a dozen years to grow to to get that volume, that quantity to put in. And, I think at the end of the day, the more you go up the levels of government, the more there's bureaucracy and the harder it is to pull things loose. Like I mentioned, the beach permits and the Port Everglades permits, they go through that same Office of National Marine Fisheries through NOAA. I can't give you an answer other than to say that whether I'm an advocate or anything else connected to Broward County or the port, we're going to go, and we're going up with a large group in May from the Greater Port Hall Chamber, the Alliance. There's a fly-in that we've done every other year. This year, I'm definitely going to attend, and that's one of the priority issues. Hope to get it pulled out. I don't know if that changes. Everything kind of changes when Washington changes, and the good thing is if you like something, wait around for 4 years or 8 years. I don't know that the bureaucracy of some of those departments though are things that change that quick.
Hopefully they'll keep pushing for us. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're one thing about Broward County and the port community, for example, is we all work together on those issues. And I've worked with over the years, I've worked with Alan West, I've worked with Lois Frankel, I've worked with Ted Deutsch, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Laura Diaz-Clark, people on any and all sides of the issue because they care about making sure that we can stay competitive, but also the environment that they're affecting and doing it. But to your point of not just the dredge, there's also a lot of work going on in the ocean research community to make sure we can figure out what's going on with bleaching and all the other issues that are going on. Water temperatures, are there other things we can do as a science community to affect that? University of Miami and Nova Southeastern Oceanographic are all working on some coral mitigation plans like that.
So, any other questions before we let Chip go home and maybe get home to reasonable time tonight? The public, anybody from the public, feel free, any questions whatsoever. This is an honor to have him. Be assured we will reach out and follow up. Thank you for coming.
You come back at any time.
You were talking, the beach rent, the getting more sand on the beach and doing all that. Is that project all complete at this point?
Say that again.
They brought in sand from central part of the country,
Right.
say brought it down and made truck after truck after truck. Is that complete? Because they were gonna do some more modification on our jetties.
Beach renourishment, if you know about Hillsborough Beach and Deerfield Beach, for example, up in segment 1, you know the beach projects are never done. When we were trying to get our actual Army Corps reimbursable program done back in 2014, 2015, there was a storm, and the Army Corps would come in and replenish sand on the dry beach, and the high parts of the beach, not down by the water. So there's always some type of renourishment going on. One of the things that I'll leave you with is one of the things we did in segment 2 when I was on the county commission. I said, look, I've done construction most of my life, mostly in the management and kind of permitting side of things. I said, is there any way we can keep this permit open? So we kept the permit up, and I want to say it was 10 or 12 years. So they've done another renourishment in Fort Lauderdale where there's a couple hot spots and up in on the beach. So to say that it's finished, I mean, you'd hope it lasts a long time. Some places, again, like up in northeast Broward County, the littoral flow just moves it, and there's groins and other things that stop it. But I wouldn't be upset if I saw trucks on the beach. I would put it that way. because it's more than likely federal government.
We actually had the gentleman who's in charge of that, Jacob Rice, come to the Central Beach Alliance meeting to give us an update. He's coming back because just what you said, the last two big storms that happened on the
Right.
beach, all the work that they did all ended up on A1A, and they can't put it back on the beach when it ends up on the road. They have to refilter it and
Yeah, there was some modifications to the jetties that were planned, and there was also a large sinkhole off the jetties to catch the sand and move it onto the south of the jetty.
Yeah, sand pit,
Pardon me?
there's a sand pit, initially was gonna be next to the Point of the Americas,
Yes,
and somebody overused the term blasting. Back in 2018, when I joined the county commission, I thought that was a really bad idea, because it sent, literally, I don't want to be, no pun intended, but it sent shockwaves through the condo community that was right there. They have a different plan now where they're gonna capture it offshore, like in a shoal,
right.
and then pump it south to Dane.
Is that still viable?
I think once they do the dredge project, yeah.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Willingness to take-
This is.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
So, thank you for that. The two gentlemen are obviously a big supporter of ours, and a guy who lives in a community, so he knows what we're dealing with. Somebody obviously hasn't told me that I forgot to approve the minutes, so Jimmy's shaking his head. Everybody obviously read the minutes from last month. Do we have a motion to approve? Yes, sir. Do we
I have a
second?
correction.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's just one. On page 11, when you were talking about the 12 properties affected by the ordinance in 2019, Andrew said that they are waterfront properties, but the minutes say that they are not waterfront properties. So just correct the not to confirm that they are waterfront properties.
We're gonna go into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
Anybody
I'll make
else?
a motion with that edit.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, okay, Dunbar and Chiro. Robert Chiro and Dunbar. Thank you very much.
All in favor of approving the minutes from last month, will say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? So again, I'm sorry, we're moving a little slower here. Dr. Nancy Gassman, you folks are probably well aware. Nancy, please come on, join us here. I'm not sure if you are. There's a reason why Nancy's here, and I'll let her explain. This came up last month where we, at the behest of a couple of the commissioners, had suggested language eliminating the issue with docs, as mentioned in section 8144 for the code of ordinances. And Dr. Gaston, kind enough to join us. There's never a time we'd rather get out of here without some additional questions, but I'm going to toss it to her at this point.
Brought you a very, very short presentation for those of you that have been on the board after we were through this big color issue prior. In 2019, the city passed a new dock permit ordinance related to section 1-144. I'm sorry, 8-144. I could slides up. Go and go to the next slide. So the city owns somewhere between 5 and 7 miles of seawall. We're constantly finding that we have seawalls we didn't know we owned. But primarily, most of these seawalls are either located within our park system or they're located directly adjacent to a roadway. And with that, the city has a section in its normal code of ordinances that talks about the rights of the city on properties abutting public waterways. And while there are some exceptions, again, close to public streets, street ends, it establishes the city's riparian rights in these locations and the right to regulate docks through our marina program under John Lesko. Next slide. But there's a section that allows private use of public property abutting waterways. And again, these changes were adopted. It says August, it was actually October of 2019. Allowing the city commission by resolution to grant a permit to use the dock, to use our city seawalls to erect private docks. And we did an extension revision at that time. And the Marine Advisory Board continues to play a role today in recommending whether those dock permits should move forward. Next slide, please. So the issue related to specifically section 17 has come up both recently. Section 17 specifically restricts the use of city seawalls for properties that already have their own riparian rights. And Southeast 8th Street in Rio Vista in the yellow box is a great example. Section 17, first and foremost, says that after July 1st, the privilege of using a city seawall by an individual who already has their own riparian rights will be eliminated. Unless that person already had a dock permit prior to June 1st, or they had that dock permit and they raised the seawall, the city-owned seawall, as a condition of their permit. So the issue that has come up recently, next slide, is that Commissioner Herbst of District 1, with support of Commissioner Sturman from District 4, has described that the properties on Cordova, which do not have their own riparian rights, he feels are similarly situated to those that are on the Finger Isles in terms of allowing docks on these public seawalls. And specifically related to section 17 of this ordinance, he has asked staff to look at eliminating the deadline of July 2025 for properties that have their own riparian rights. And I think one of the interesting things about the seawall ordinance as it's currently written is that you have to remember that you're not allowed to rent these docks, these private docks on the public seawall. They're not allowed to be rented. And that the boats have to have their title be in the exact same name as the name on the dock permit. So for those people who are trying to double their dockage so that they can put their corporate boat or to rent dock space or allow their cousin Jed to put their boat on this second dock, that is not allowed under the current ordinance. Next slide, please. So when this whole program and major revision of this document occurred, the Marine Advisory Board had two specific concerns. And the second one is the one that's relevant here. And what they agreed to at that time was that they wanted the elimination of the prohibition of riparian right holders to have docks on city seawalls, as long as they paid for upgrading the seawall and code requirements for the life of the permit. So a major change has happened in the interim, and that is that the new seawall top elevation requirement changed in March of 2023. And now those seawalls have to be at a minimum top elevation of 5 feet. So the city has been using its seawall master plan to make decisions about which seawalls need to be prioritized that are adjacent to roadways that need to be elevated to prevent tidal flooding. And so some of these locations where there are individuals who have existing dock permits on city seawalls are now at a decision point as to whether they're going to elevate the city seawall or whether they're going to allow the city to raise the seawall, and then they will give up their privilege to apply for a dock permit. So given the language of the Marine Advisory Board at the time of the original change to the dock ordinance and the request by the commissioner, next slide, it would be fairly easy to accommodate the removal of the date and still maintain that if individuals want to retain their privileges that already have riparian rights on the city seawall, that we continue to recognize that they have the ability to do that, eliminate the date, but note that at such date that the city raises the seawall with municipal funds, that they're no longer eligible to apply for dock. At this point in time, no decisions have been made either by the commission or by staff. This is still under advisement and brought to you just to give you an idea of where some of the thought processes.
So the idea would be, the concept would be that if the owner paid for the seawall upgrade, that then they would be able to keep their dock or the ability to do that.
Correct.
Would they be paying for the city to do the seawall because they're using the steel seawall? I mean, they couldn't do the seawall on their own. They wouldn't have mismatching seawalls. Would they all be the same seawall?
We have mismatched seawalls in certain locations. The area that seems to be of most interest right now is at Southeast 8th Street. And all of the property owners that are across from the city seawall have gotten together and they are intending to hire a single contractor to perform the upgrade.
So that you
Which would-
sheet piling also?
They are asking the city for a waiver to construct it in a different manner. And at this point, I don't know that we've gotten much further.
Anybody else? Ed?
In your map, so you have a red line on where the seawall comes from, like, right near the yacht club south, almost 15. That's the community I live in, and that's of a particular interest that we need to let the residents know about it. You're saying that the city can redo that seawall?
So the city has a seawall master plan. We are currently working on an upgrade. The original seawall master plan did not include all of what we are discovering is in the ownership of the city.
Yeah.
We have a program called asset management where we're trying to get a better handle on all of our assets that we own, whether they're underground or whether they're seawalls. And so we're working toward that. So the second master plan will be considering more of the city-owned seawalls than the first one did. And it will include those that are in parks. But in any location that we have identified that a city-owned seawall is either not in good condition or is at an elevation that will be threatened by sea level rise within a reasonably short period, that we will be looking to prioritize that for future funding to raise the wall.
Okay, so along from, I guess it's 12th Street to 15th Street, or,
We've been on Cordova,
yes,
city does not own that seawall.
okay. Because you
We
had
own
the
it from
line,
12th to 7th.
pardon me?
We own it from 12th to 7th.
Okay. Because on that first, you had the red line all the way to 15th.
Anybody else?
No.
Yes. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is John Robstrom. I represent Andre Dreyfus over on Southeast 8th Street. So the thing about this ordinance is back in 2019, it was changed. And at the time, staff had presented an ordinance that actually completely forbade these people from building a second dock. And what you have to understand is just like then, it's only 12 people we're talking about. Just like then, those 12 people were not individually noticed. I was told about this meeting and that staff was going to present this about 20 minutes before your meeting. So it's not on your agenda. I'm here, my client's here. We don't know, we're shocked about it, but either way, we're here, we're gonna talk about it. A big issue that we have is if you look at, I have an aerial photo that goes back to 1957. There's docks there. Why in 2019 that city staff decided that we shouldn't have docks there anymore? I'm not sure. Yes, the commission did vote on it. I hear you over there, Nancy, you're right, it was voted on. But Commissioner Herbst, as he said, wanted to equate the rights of these 12 people to the rights of Cordova Road, which I think staff misinterpreted. What they were saying is in Cordova Road, the city paid for the seawall upgrade and still allowed dock permits. Why for these 12 property owners is the city going to, if they do raise it, not allow them? I don't know why, right? It doesn't make much sense. So all they want is the elimination of subsection 17, which specifically targets these 12 property owners from not being able to build a dock after July 1 of 2025 or after the city raises the seawall. There's no reason that these 12 properties should be treated any differently than every other person that's trying to apply for a dock permit on city-owned seawall. It's a precedent. It's gone on for over 70 years. Just doesn't make much sense. I think my client would like to probably talk for a second.
Well, introduce yourself, please. Introduce yourself, please.
Andre Dreyfus, I was here in October.
Thank
And I made a presentation to try to get a dock permit, raise the sea cap. And I explained everything to you guys and you guys voted it. And it was approved unanimously. And the day before I was supposed to go to the city, I was informed that I couldn't do that. So I don't understand why we being treated any differently than anybody else on Cordova, any other street that already has dock permits issued on city-owned seawalls. I think it's not fair. I think we should be treated like everybody else in the city.
So first of all, everybody's supposed to be treated fairly, it goes without saying. Everybody gets treated fairly. Our job only goes so
Well,
far.
if we were treated fairly with due respect, we would have been notified in 2019 when section 17 was voted on. Because it simply singles out us, nobody else. Once again,
So we have, so first of all, in 2019, yes, please, I
The
want.
law does not require individual notice on an ordinance of this nature. It may require it for zoning ordinances, but not on this case.
well,
Now, is it policy matter? Somebody may have made the decision. Let's do that, but it's not a requirement.
I understand it's not a requirement. I'm talking about fairness. We were not
Never
notified.
confuse the law with fairness.
Exactly right.
We're not notified then, and we were not notified now.
You're here, so obviously you're aware.
This was a.
I'm here because I was forewarned.
Yeah, I want to say I apologize. There's no decision. This was a discussion. We, Dr. Gaston was kind enough to offer to come, but this is not a decision where we're gonna vote on something. This was fact finding for us, fact finding for all of you, et cetera, fact finding for Dr. Gaston, but there's no decision. We made it.
Still not on the agenda. Still not on the agenda. There's been other presentations on the agenda. I
Because
know it's not a legal requirement.
no,
But it's
whether
just-
it's a legal requirement or not, it's not a formal presentation. And if there's something that's been misconstrued, I apologize, but again, Dr. Gaston was kind enough to volunteer to speak with us. At some point in time where we were gonna vote on that, you could be assured that it would be messaged to the public. Could I ask Andrew, wherever you are, what happened with this? When we're saying that this was, that we unanimously approved it, what happened after that? It went to the commission?
I'm not familiar with us rejecting any permit on Southeast Eighth.
So there was, Mr. Dreyfus did come to the board
Correct.
and what his dock permit was recommended for approval.
Right.
When it went to city engineering, they determined that because it was a capping rather than a replacement of that section of seawall, it was of concern. And that's what stopped it.
So that response is not a rejection of your request to cap. It is a engineering opinion that your seawall was not strong enough to take the cap. And so they would not approve it, if I understand.
That was what I recall.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that from a point of knowledge, I'm saying that from a point of conjecture. That it sounds like what you wanted to do was cap the seawall.
To that point. With engineering. I simply couldn't go to the city to apply at that point.
So we're kind
That
of.
would have passed my desk.
Yeah.
I'm unfamiliar with what you're saying. I am familiar with what Nancy is saying. It makes more sense that it was stopped there in engineering.
And that's unrelated to subsection.
That's unrelated, that's correct.
I just want to make sure I wasn't that important.
So I do want to address the one thought that this provision of this ordinance only applies to Southeast Eighth. There are 31 parcels, upland parcels that potentially would be impacted by this particular ordinance that we have found to date. But another concern that we have is that we have raised a number of city seawalls with the understanding is that once they were raised, they would no longer be subject to private dock permits moving forward for those individuals that already have docks associated with their properties. And a change in this ordinance would open up those brand new seawalls to the potential for docks.
Thanks, that's the question. But you take 31, is that for the whole document ordinance or just subsection 17? That's
Just
12 number
subsection
17 in
17.
Cuba.
Just subsection 17.
So you've been concentrating on only 12 properties. We have a wider scope. We got 31 properties.
No, I understand.
that are impacted by
The
this.
12 is from Andrew Cuba in 2019 during a Mad Minutes
Which-
meeting. So you guys identified
Which
more.
is
I
is
understand.
what we
That's what
had
I
thought applied at the time, and since
Got it.
then, we have identified other locations. I take it wrong, it's 32 because you brought me the
Oh,
one on
the
Barcelona.
Barcelona, yeah.
So
So that's people that have their own riparian rights and also.
They have
Right.
their own riparian rights, and there's a city seawall in front of their home on the other side of the wreck.
Dr. Meyer.
Maybe a solution, but how do you know if the city seawall?
If you go to the property appraiser's website and you go to the map, and there's a little I button, which is information, and you click on any location, it will identify who the owner is. And again, in most situations, but not all, if there is a roadway adjacent to a seawall, in most cases, not all, that seawall is a city-owned seawall. And so when the city, when those seawalls were built, their intention was to keep the upland up. It was to ensure no erosion of the roadway. But because of sea level rise over time, we are now having to relook at those seawalls and rebuild them in a way that they keep the sea out. And that is a very different way to construct seawalls. And our major purpose is to protect the roadway so that it maintains access to people's homes and maintains access to.
Didn't we just have two last month that we approved on Cordova Road, 2 dock permits, right? And that was affected by the same way those docks were torn down. They redid the seawall, the city redid the seawall, and then the property owners had to rebuild their
That's why
docks.
it's a permit, not a waiver.
Right. So what's the difference between this?
These properties already have water frontage to the rear.
Right, but they've
And
already
then-
been,
And then
they've
they
already
want to
been
have a
given.
second dock on the street side, which abuts the waterway.
But
That's the
they,
distinction between the two.
but they've already been given those docks.
No,
Some, there
not-
are some of them that have.
Am I not right? They have docks on here. I mean,
That
So-
is, universally, that is not a true statement. In some instances it is, in other instances, it's not.
well, I'm asking, were they not permitted to have these docks here? The docks that are here, that are there? Are they
Again, some, yes, others, no.
on
And
that?
now you're gonna be opening up the
On
door
Cordova.
of ju-
No, I'm talking about
He's
8th Street.
talking about- he's talking about
Southeast
the
80.
same ones John's talking about.
I'm asking because I'm looking at Google Earth and like there's 1, 2, 3, it looks like 4 properties out of the 5 that are right there have docks on there. And I'm asking, are those approved docks? Are those permitted? Did we give them the ability to have those docks
In some cases, yes, in some cases, no. There are some of those docks,
that are legal?
some are legal, some of them are not.
There are three permits in Southeast State.
So let's just talk the legal one, because the illegal one, if there's an illegal one, then that's a whole nother thing, right? If we're talking illegal, what's the difference? Why wouldn't we allow them to do what we did with Cordova and then rip the docks down?
Because the
Put stuff up
commission
and redo
unanimously
it.
adopted 8-144 sub 17, which basically precluded them.
Because they have their own, they have their own right.
Yes,
Okay.
but they could do it up until July 2025, or when the city built the seawall with municipal funds.
It's my understanding from Commissioner Herbst that it's nothing about the date on this. He thinks they should be considered the same as Cordova.
So
And that subsection should be not in there.
Doing what you had up there.
reviewing the video, and again, I think we could go forward one slide. In reviewing the video, his discussion was that he felt that these locations that already have riparian rights are similarly situated. That was his term, similarly situated as to Cordova Road.
Mhm.
And at the end of his discussion, he directed staff to look at eliminating the deadline of July 20. For those properties.
I listened to that twice.
I had personal conversations, so I'm
listening
asking,
to what was said at the
just,
commission meeting.
yeah, just listening like what he was talking about, because this was something we spoke about and it came up, so I called him to say, hey, this was something that came up, and then we got swapped on it. What is this? We had a personal conversation about it, and what I understand was that he was intended, he thinks they should be the same as Cordova Road. They should not have to not have a dock there if they.
Let me ask you a question. Let's assume, forget
32.
what if we got properties that never had a dock permit? Never had any intent of trying to take advantage of that second water frontage. And now we've gone ahead and we've raised the seawall. We're not gonna open up the door to have that.
Deny
Is
the
that-
permit.
Pardon me?
You can deny the permit.
On what basis?
Well, but what, if, do they have the
If
right
you-
to
if
ask
you-
for that
if-
permit?
Well, why would we-
I'm asking, do they have the right to ask for that
It
permit?
depends on how you restructure
The privilege,
subsection
right,
17.
the right, the privilege to ask for the permit. So I'm asking, if they just haven't done it, what, that, I don't understand where that matters.
These currently have the right to request a permit, and they will continue to have that right through July of 2025.
Mr. Rostrom's premise was predicated on historically going back to 59, where these people had dock permits. And I'm talking about another situation away from his area that he's discussing, where there's never been a dock. And now you're gonna open it up. I'll give you a good example. Sunrise Key. There's a bridge leading to Sunrise Key. There's a one small segment there that's a city seawall. I happen to know the owners of the property that are right there. They have water access on the other side. It's like, why would you go ahead? Why do they need to put another dock there when they've already got dock space at the rear of their property with probably 125-foot side yard to side yard?
So my question is, it's a question of fairness. Why should they have it? It's a policy decision.
Ultimately, it's always a policy decision by the commission, yes.
But if they have the right to do it, or they, the privilege to ask for it at least, and we approve it, what's the matter?
Was never asked for, never envisioned, in the scenario that I just gave you, Seminole Drive.
Right, but it could be.
I
If someone
happen to know
has
the
the-
people
if
that own
someone has the
property
want to
and
do
they
it.
would have no intent.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, building two docks now, that's a lot of money and all that stuff, but it is also the ability to have two different boats there that you own. Obviously, we're not renting them out. No one's sitting in Fort Lauderdale, can we rent them out? But it is the right to have two boats there, and that does bring it up there.
Permit.
Huh?
So if you had a dock permit for 40 years now, you'd like to give it up.
Well, I remember this gentleman, because I came into this commission around the time that he had his thing, and we all did unanimously approve it. And I do remember there was some issue with like, oh, he has two sides, why does he need it? But he has the right or the privilege to ask for it, and we can approve it. What's the wrong of it?
Let me reach.
What's the city's, why is the city not wanting to do it? Is what I get at, because obviously too, that, not saying it does, but it does
We've
bring
been
up their
given a
property
new-
value. That's more taxes the city gets in by having them have a higher
We've
ability to
been
have.
given a new direction pursuant to Commissioner Herbst to address at the conference agenda, and we're gonna be traveling in that direction.
So we have a question in the chief seats back there. Stand up, please.
Yes. Ma'am, I'm one of the homeowners that you're referring to on Southeast State Street. I'm a neighbor of Dreyfus's. What is the agenda you just spoke of in the direction? You just said which hurts.
Commissioner Herbst has requested staff to look at this ordinance to potentially remove, there we go, to potentially remove the deadline for July 2025. And
I know.
there's some discussion about consistency between Cordova and the Finger Isles. I think, and one of the other questions was why was this originally recommended? It was felt by original drafters of this ordinance that those individuals that had riparian rights, that there is some inherent risk of having a private dock on a city seawall. And that if somebody already had a riparian right, that we felt that essentially a 6-year time frame for them to come in and raise the seawall in order to protect the roadway, because that's what raising the seawalls is all about, is protecting the roadway and protecting people's access to their homes. that if those individuals that had riparian rights already, that if they wanted to continue to have riparian, the privilege of using the city's riparian right, that they should raise the seawall to
On their
meet the
own dime.
current standard on their own dime, and that was also the recommendation of the Marine Advisory Board, is that don't prohibit them from having the privilege to ask, but require them to raise the seawall at their cost.
Okay, so that is a really good point, and it counters a couple of the concerns. This gentleman here was talking about a situation where there's 32 properties, some of them was on a dock where they have never had one, and it could cause a problem. But you're willing to give it to them if they pay for the dock
To raise the
refurbish it.
seawall.
So that obviously the conditions that you're concerned about don't exist if we will pay for the raising of the seawall. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, let me,
I'm repeating, I'm referring to certain things that you have to take.
let's take that small example that I used over
Yes.
there in Sunrise Key. What
This is-
if the
this is
city,
Bob Dunkel, he's the city attorney.
Thank you,
No.
I've talked to you before.
I'm an assistant city attorney,
Okay.
yeah.
Didn't mean to give you.
That's a quick way to
That was
do it. Right now, we're talking, I mean, what we were talking about is you had a period of time to raise it on your own. Now, in Seminole, let's say that the city has already raised that.
Yes.
Would you allow them to now put a dock where the city has raised the seawall at municipal expense?
But if they pay for it, they can do it and put a dock.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
So
and
how
that-
does that get around?
Not if you eliminate that July 25,
Yeah.
you're basically opening it up for them to take advantage of putting a dock there where the city built the seawall, as opposed to those who built the seawall at their expense.
Wouldn't the
Yeah,
permit
Yeah,
have
I
to
get
be-
what, so now I
It's still
understand what
need a
you were trying to
permit.
say, is because no one has ever had a dock there. And they have not, and now if they did have a dock there, they would have the opportunity to pay to have it. And if someone right now wanted to ask for that dock, they could say, I want to get that dock and I'll build the seawall up, make it the right thing, and then put my dock on. But at a certain point, when the city pays the money to do
Yeah.
it, you don't want to let them to have it anymore because we've eaten the money on it and they have their own repair rights. Okay, I get that.
Okay, I got
But
it.
these people have docks,
I'm
giving them the opportunity to do that. I
not
mean,
debating that part.
yeah.
Do they not require a permit regardless to build a dock on the city-owned seawall? Say for Cordova example, right? They need a permit in order to build a dock on the city-owned seawall, correct?
They need two sets of permits.
Okay,
They
so
need
if it's a policy decision, couldn't that be made by the commission at that point? If
And-
your
and I've
example
said that.
Sunrise
It's a policy
Key,
decision.
hey, they don't want a dock here, the city council could deny that permit. So I think it
No,
shouldn't
whoa,
be.
whoa, 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 whoa. The city council can only deny the permit if it's in violation,
Oh, okay.
contravention of the ordinance. Now, what we're talking about is restructuring subsection 17.
Wouldn't they be able to carve out other individual addresses like they've done here?
That's a possibility, but that's not the set of cards that are being dealt right now.
Okay, and besides that, in subsection 17, isn't there also a part of the ordinance that if the city does indeed build up the seawall, that the riparian rights on across the street will be prohibited as well? Like they won't be able to build the dock if the
It's
city,
structured right now. And
Yes.
again, if we eliminate the deadline, that provision could remain in that section or it could be removed.
okay, so it
Again,
would,
that's the conversation.
Or
we're
another
having.
possibility is to carve out some of those areas where the seawall has already been raised and cut those,
Yes.
yeah, I mean,
because when the seawall master plan in 2019 was developed, I'm assuming that the plan was for the city to build up the seawall, an example for on this eighth as well, right?
ultimately.
But it hasn't gotten to it yet.
No, but it's currently planned for the fall of 2025.
2025, okay, so that's like the 6-year deadline. I mean, so if the city, and they're planning on putting their heads together at the city or at the street there,
Property owners.
and they want to build up the seawall themselves to maintain these rights to have a permit there, then maybe it should be, the entire thing seems like adverse to their cause, not only the deadline, but also
Right, but
the
nothing-
city
nothing's
building up the
stopping them-
seawall, and that would be the entire subsection.
But nothing's stopping them right now from, they are following.
I
the
mean,
path you just described. They
yeah,
are
a
getting
year.
together,
It's a
they're
year
gonna
to get-
raise it, and they're gonna
exactly.
try to do it before the deadline. If we remove the deadline, it doesn't change their path.
So what would happen if they started planning on building up this new seawall, but then they just couldn't get it done by fall of 2025 and the city just moves in? What if they're like halfway through and then the city decides it's their time to build up the seawall and see what I'm saying? I mean, obviously this would be handled, but it seems like it's a weird situation if you're gonna remove the deadline, but then the city could still come in and start building the seawall before they got their ducks in a row, they would,
If
lose
people are
out.
Working in good faith.
yeah,
The
okay,
city is a reasonable.
okay.
And why would the city, if they're about to build that seawall up at their expense, why would the city come along and go, oh, no, we're gonna do it at our expense now?
I mean,
you
the
follow
city's
me?
the one that set this
It would,
deadline.
most
so-
likely, it would continue to go forward at their expense. I doubt that we'd step in and say, no, we're gonna do it now.
But that brings us back to the argument that you're treating us differently than you did on Cordova. And when you say we have other waterfront behind our house, we also paid more for our houses because of that, and we pay more taxes than most people in Cordova because of that. So you have to take that into consideration too.
What outcome are you hoping for moving forward from the city?
I'm hoping that the city works with us and who builds our seawall to make it reasonable so we can afford to take care of it, so we can get our dock permit, or that you grant us the opportunity to get a dock permit and you take care of the seawall like you did on Cordova. There's two options.
Well, you already have the ability to elevate that seawall at your expense.
And your specifications, we can't afford to do it. It's astronomical. And we were saying, you put us in a position just like Cordova and you took care of that, but you're not taking care of it with us, allowing us to have the option to get a dock. And you're penalizing us because we have water behind our house, but we have situations that make that fair because we pay more taxes.
It's about $300,000 with 100 linear feet of sheet piles.
It's 3 times the cost of the concrete pad.
So then again, I just. I want to reiterate that we are building these seawalls to protect the roadway, not to penalize anyone, but to ensure that that roadway doesn't erode and that we are doing our best to protect that roadway from sea level rise.
Nancy, you know.
However, in Novo, we still have floods.
So I was just
With the
gonna
new
say,
seawalls.
we're not even dealing with the high tides. We have videos of flooding on 8th Street because the grades aren't working properly. So we have ample flooding when there isn't even a high tide because it's coming up on the other side, not on the seawall side, but where our grass is and our homes are. That's why.
I know all about the specifics, catch basin that you're concerned.
So tell us, we have to take that kind of bill to raise our seawall when we still have a flooding issue on our street? It's kind of, doesn't even make sense.
Let me pose a question. There may be some board members here that can address this. What would the life expectancy of the city's program with a sheet be compared with just putting a higher cap on the seawall?
Norbert Roberts.
They will put the sheet pile down, right?
No, I said I was hoping that they put an ordinance on the thing, what you did in Cordova Road, as far as I'm concerned, and being in the marine construction business, the sheet pile, the only way to go. I said, first of all, I said the depth is fine and it stops what she's talking about of water coming up on the backside as opposed to the front side and stuff over there. And I said the sheet piles in my grandkids' lifetime would still be around. They are, no port builds them with panel walls, all sheet piles for that reason.
Now, putting in simpleton terms for me, I think that what that means is that if you merely raise the cap as opposed to the sheet rock, that you're gonna have to do it again much sooner.
Most of the seawalls, let's put it this way, this-
X amount of years versus what it costs for the sheet metal, still be less than money.
take the seawall on the north side of the New River. It's undermined and it's drastically undermined where if you look and you see the pavers going down and everything else, there's only one reason it's coming out the other side. So if you were to put a cap on top of that, you're not doing anything whatsoever. You need to get the sheets down to
So
stop
city
the
engineering
erosion.
is trying to implement best practices.
Once again, though,
Sir.
Had to go down.
I'll go to the street. The seawall was originally installed in 1926.
So it's fair.
100 years, we have had success with that seawall. We have not, and the bleaching is not due to seawall rising, which will make many that here we have that, flooding on the streets. But the seawall is working, the seawall is performing well. If you just put a simple cap on top of it. Our neighbor south of, west of us has just put in small cap. Proved successful. I don't know how many years we're looking at, but I think 100-year seawall has been working.
So with due respect, I'm not an expert. We have a couple guys that are. We do have an expert sitting next to us, so we're not signed up, Dr. Glass. Yes, I'm answering.
You said that someone just put up app, is that on their private property or is that?
The private property.
But it still affects the road you're concerned about, whether it's public or private, you still want to protect that road, it's the same road.
And again, it's a little different when you have 75 feet deep property compared to something that's directly adjacent.
This property is 220 feet.
There's no requirement, there's no limitation to put a cap on a seawall as long as it's structurally sound enough to put that cap on.
Well, you approved it, their seawall is as old as ours, the rest of us on the block, and if you're trying to ultimately protect that Cordova Road, which says public road, why would you approve that? It makes us apply to different standards.
Again, this is how the ordinance was written in 2019, after a substantial amount of input and
I know.
I think
So
three,
does it make
then we came to the
split
board.
the vest here but not here?
It just doesn't make sense. If we're trying to
Huh?
protect the
It doesn't make sense, right? You put the vest there, but these guys do whatever they want. It's really not gonna stop water.
And I can just hang in my paint for myself and do whatever is required to get a seawall permit approved.
Yeah, and I think that opinion is one of the reasons why the commissioner has brought this item up for discussion.
And when you say he's brought it up for discussion, where is that going to be discussed in?
So the direction, if you just turn around.
Yeah.
That's almost verbatim what was asked for. He asked staff to look at eliminating the deadline of July 2020.
Take the rights of these
Properties.
people to the property owners on Grove Road.
It's not only the dates.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to him, Bobby, you've spoken to him, you know that it's more than that. That's
Not only the dates.
absolutely.
Believe she's taking that from a direct quote from the video of
And
the
she's
meeting.
cutting some of the quote off, that's fine, I'm not disagreeing that that's part of the quote.
I'll go back and listen to it.
He's talking about eliminating section 17,
So
not
that,
eliminating the dates alone.
again, listen to this very carefully. He does not specifically state eliminate section 17. What he said was that he described the properties on Cordova and saying that they are similarly situated to those from Finger Isles,
Needs to share the same rights.
and asked us to look at that along with eliminating the deadline of July 2025. So that's what we're looking at. And again, we're bringing it to this board to provide feedback and have the discussion before any proposals are made. Once a proposal is drafted for the ordinance, it will come back before this board for their review. And at that point, it will be duly noted. The reason that it is currently on this agenda without a specific subject matter listed is because this discussion is under old business. Because they started talking about it last board meeting.
Oh,
and
wait,
then-
last morning we didn't talk about it. Literally, you brought it up and you shut it down like that.
Pretty much.
And then that's and you named John Herbst, he's my commissioner. I called him and said, hey, what was this issue? We started talking about it. And he gave me what he thought of it, which is what I'm regurgitating now. And then he thinks that they should have the same rights as Cordova Road, is what maybe he needs to go back to commission and say that, better, but because I didn't listen to that
I don't
meeting.
see anything I'm saying as not fully understanding what the commissioner wants. Before we move forward, because it's his request, we will certainly have additional conversations with him when this started to be drafted. But
Because right
our-
now, what we're getting into is we're talking, but we can't recommend anything at this point, right? Yeah, we can't recommend anything.
Staff was to look at these issues and bring back a proposal. That's the direction of the move.
But you tried to bring this to the meeting last time and none of us seemed to understand what
None
it
of
was
us
you were
understood
talking.
what. So.
That was
we
why you
were-
asked her to come,
And-
right?
Go ahead, please.
I was not aware of it until they brought up. I was kind of blindsided by it. And I know that this issue has got a
Last
lot of,
month.
a lot of different features to it. And I believe that I said, wait a minute, this is kind of a multifaceted
You did.
issue. And I know, Jamie, you agreed with me. And at that point, we said, let's put a pause on it. And we're bringing it back here under old business.
Well, we're bringing, first
I
of all,
got a question on, I come before you and I've got a seawall and everything else and stuff on it, and I want to put a cap on it, and I want to raise a cap a foot, okay, to bring it up. Who in the city certifies that it'll take the weight and everything else? What kind of engineer and stuff comes out there? And if so, I know that a private contractor, a private engineer for a contractor can override, from what I'm understanding, override what the actual engineer from the city.
So when someone comes in for a permit to put a cap on, in most situations, they have to provide an engineering statement that says the existing seawall can take the weight. It's a slightly different situation when you are bringing a cap to a city-owned seawall to the city. I don't have the details on that, so I can't comment on what actually happened. I'm inferring based on what the statements were. I don't know what happened with that particular one, but it's a different situation when you're coming to the city and say, I want to throw a cap on a city-owned seawall. It's our seawall.
What I'm
When
talking about is,
when it's private seawall, they have to bring an appropriate marine engineering statement that says it is structurally sound and it will take the weight of this much concrete.
see, there's a design, what I was basically saying at, the design that I was saying at is, if I'm gonna put like a foot as opposed to 8 inches or 2 foot or 18 inches, for instance, so I'll use an example like over at Lewis Landing. Lewis Landing and stuff, in order to certify that, they basically were able to put styrofoam in the center of a 2 foot cap. The styrofoam took away the weight that normally a 2 foot or an 18-inch cap would. Now, the city engineer, when you submit that, that'll approve that for the styrofoam in there as opposed to taking the weight of the entire concrete. That's that if they brought an engineer's report and they say, oh, we took X amount of weight out because we used styrofoam in there, that would be approved and stuff by the city, is what you're saying?
And I can't tell you if it would be approved or not approved. It would have to be consistent with specifications, and if it was something new that no one had ever approved before, there would be conversations with appropriately credentialed individuals who would decide whether that was an appropriate thing for them to do. But to do that on a private wall is a different situation than to do it on a.
Your motive is the same, to protect a public roadway. Why is it different?
I don't think the question that I'm being asked has to do with whether it's in front of a roadway or not in front of a roadway. The question I'm being asked is if someone brought a lighter seawall cap that would be, that the existing seawall would be able to take the
I
structural
understand
weight.
precisely. Why is the specification different from that than your public ownership of the seawall when you're ultimately trying to protect public
So
safety?
we don't require private entities to put in sheet pile seawalls.
Why? If your ultimate goal is the same thing, to protect public safety in the roadways.
It's the same basic reason that you are bringing up, that the cost is prohibitive for most private entities to put a sheet pile seawall behind their house.
But it's okay for us in front of our house. It doesn't make sense. But you're
Because we're trying to protect the roadway.
But that roadway is going to be protected by us if we put sheet metal, but the person in front of us who is a private owner does not have sheet metal.
So there's the way that this seawall ordinance, and this goes back to Mr. Dunkel's comment that this is a complicated issue. And that is that if any property allows tidal flows to leave their property and impact either their neighbors or the adjacent right of way, then they will be cited and have to address the issue with their own seawall.
So let me just give you a scenario. If a private person raises their seawall according to the spec, the city requires them to raise it now. And the next person is a public seawall who's got to raise it according to your specs. What's going to happen in between those two properties? Do they meet?
Great question.
I understand. Before
So there's plenty of examples where you can see where the city seawall has been raised and the adjacent property has not been raised. Again, the city cannot raise a private seawall. And at this point, there's currently, and we have been looking diligently, there's currently no funding source to help people raise their seawalls. But I can tell you that, for example, on Los Olas, on the south side of Los Olas, in order to protect the evacuation route, we have recently raised seawalls on the south side. And you can see that they're substantially higher than the surrounding seawalls. And one of the things that I can easily predict is that during this next high tide season, that certain properties that are adjacent to where our seawalls have been elevated will start causing flooding. And they were never targeted as potential for citation previously because the city seawall was lower than theirs. But now that those seawalls have been elevated, those private properties are now under threat of being cited if tidal flows are leaving their property and impacting the city's right of way.
So folks, go ahead.
After this discussion, I think I have a much better grasp of what we're talking about. And I understand it pretty well, and I didn't understand it at our last meeting, and that's why we asked for it to come back to this, so we would understand. What I do see is that I believe it should absolutely be on the, that these properties should be treated the same as the properties on Cordova. And that's really the issue here. And I don't think they should be penalized because they have another piece of waterfront property. And with the idea of fairness, because it's both sides of it shouldn't matter if they have land or water on the other side of the property for them. I think it's just the city wanting to keep its expenses down and that they just don't want to pay for it. So they're extorting the people who have the docks now and saying that either you're going to pay for it or you're not going to get the dock. And I don't think that that's right for doing that. I think that I agree that the sheet pile is the way to go. And I also understand that having sheet pile on one side and another thing on the other side, it doesn't work. But
Not gonna work.
I think that I think that Commissioner Herbst is correct in wanting to treat these properties the same as Cordova Road. And I think that it's for the good of the city to do that. And I don't think that it's only because the roads are for the good of the city, not just for the people who live on that particular street. So I basically think it comes back to, is it fair that the city pays for the seawalls that the city owns and that they let the people who live on them have docks with the seawall? So anyway.
Words of wisdom from Jim Harrison. We're going to wrap it up with that because we have a larger agenda. This is something that, with all due respect to folks that thought that we kind of just snuck this in. As Dr. Gassman said, this was old business. The reason that she's talking now is out of respect. So we can let her leave and we deal with other business. But I promise we'll invite her back. One of the questions I have with Dr. Gassman is how realistic is clean water on the river? I want you to answer it, but we would like you back to help us with that. With respect to this issue, we will discuss it. Andrew will discuss it with a number of you folks again who have expressed an interest, and it may be worthy to put it on the formal agenda item next month. But we can't take any further action. Dr. Gassman, thanks very much.
Thanks, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
One, Steve, one thing.
Yes, sir.
Can we get to 31 that there are 32 properties? So obviously this is going to come up again, so we might as well look at the 31 or 32 properties that are, because these seem to be very specific, right? This little
So
section.
why don't we get,
But,
I'll work on it after much of an issue with regard to 8 and so on and so forth. It's the other areas that.
we'll get a list and send.
Well, it does seem like it is an issue because every homeowner's here. It seems like there's three homeowners here that they're on 8th and they're not happy about. You know what I mean, right?
We got our direction on here. We're going on that. That's. I don't
Right?
think it's an issue.
Okay.
We know
so-
what Commissioner brought, excuse me.
I apologize.
What Commissioner Herb said, we're going forward, but there's other areas that we need to consider and tinker with.
Right.
And it may come out that you just eliminate subsection 17 It may come out that you end up eliminating a date. There may be some intermediate grounds. I've got three different versions that I'm working with right now.
It might- it might-
It takes a while to get it right, so they can't get it before you want.
I'm sorry.
Not just her, this is not his district we're talking about.
Correct.
Warren Sturman's district.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I think we should include him in that conversation.
He
too.
is included.
Okay.
So
And he has the same
we originally mentioned
understanding.
that, I'm sorry, that John brought it up and then Warren chimed in as well. So again, we're gonna make sure that all were.
All right.
Yes.
One last one. Yes. To rest assured, my role is to draft something that the commissioners want. So that takes care of Sturman, takes.
Very good.
We okay? So we have we do have business to attend to. We have a dock waiver, and this dock waiver is 1801 Southeast 21st Avenue. And Alejandra Geraldo is presenting on behalf of Lovell Marine Construction. Alejandra, please come up.
We're gonna pull up the PowerPoint.
Yes, you have the PowerPoint and welcome.
Should I go there?
You can go wherever you come
Right
from.
here.
Already a dock there.
Yeah, come here.
Live on it.
Let's see.
The little one lived the whole.
There anymore.
Take it, it's all 60 feet.
Yeah, we will. So, Alejandro, with all due respect, where is she? So Alejandro is with Lovell. Lovell is 1801. Previous one. So Alejandro is with our old friends, the Lovels. And she is new to presenting, so we're all gonna be patient and help her with this presentation. So no pressure there, so you got it.
Good evening, everyone. Construction, and I'm here to represent the owner of 1801 Southeast 21st Avenue, Mr. Frank Smith, who is interested in designing a
That's the amount
pier
that they want.
extending 64 feet 8 inches. Next is in the, you can see the report graph. The property line is and it's 75 feet out in the north side and 65 feet in the south side. Next. This a another photo, another aerial of this existing concrete dock, which
That's
extends
actually the property
62.8 feet. And which Mr. Gray got received a waiver in 2021. And next. And as you can see, the proposed sleeve extends out 64 feet 8 inches. You should also notice the photo, which is part of the reason we had moved the leaf so far west. Next. The next page represents the extraordinary circumstances, which includes the 65 feet plus submerged property line, the extraordinary width of the waterway, and the owner interested in protecting the vessel from the waves created of traffic. Anybody have any questions?
Counselor.
As I'm looking at this, I am interpreting the request for 65.2 feet to be measured from the platted property line, am I correct?
Kevin?
61 feet. On the website.
And the code is supposed to be there from the property line.
The property line is actually farther away. That point, you can see on that drawing.
Sir, please identify yourself, okay, please.
My name is Flavio Coronel, I'm the project manager for Lovell Beach.
Mario.
Flavio Coronel.
Oh, Flavio Coronel.
I'm the
Thank you.
project manager for Lovell. Yeah, I was mentioning that the property line that's in the road.
That's the property.
Is actually within one. This is probably gonna be within the limits of this property. This is what we're asking. Where this book. We're going outside this property. It's gonna be
Well,
inside the property.
The amount that you're seeking a waiver for has to be measured from the property line.
Right, the property line is right here.
And I've interpreted your drawing as asking for a waiver of 65.2 feet as measured from the property. I see. You're measuring it from the wet face. Do you know what the distance between the wet face and the property line is?
Third, you see in the regular, this one is like 65. Oh, the other one is like
Oh, it's 3,
65.
okay, another 3 feet. So you're actually asking for 68.2
Both the-
as measured from the property line.
Repeat, it's not from the property line, it's from the west side.
That's my point. The code talks in terms as measured from the property line, not as measured from the wet face.
They agree, I know that's from the way.
And explain, if the wet face is 3 feet off of the property line, it seems to me that you really need to be asking for 68.2 instead of 65.2. If you could just make that correction, then it would be consistent with the way the ordinance is written.
Yeah, what I'm saying that the property line is right here.
No, not the submerged property line.
Okay.
I'm not talking about, I'm talking about the upland property
All
line.
right,
Yeah.
okay, got it.
Can you modify that? Okay. To reflect that it's 65.2.
Question, so.
68, I'm sorry,
68.
I'm bad at math.
And we talked about issues with respect to the moratorium, and one of the ongoing issues we have is just understanding how we're measuring these bad things. Is it wet face? Is it property line? It technically is your property line.
With one exception, Cordova Road,
Thank you very much.
we use wet face.
Right. So again, understanding that, and with all due respect, you're going to see it in the next application, there's also some ambiguity with respect to property line. And wet face.
That was the direction I see, was the measure from the wetlands. Only because
Whatever.
there was precedent for that went with the figure here that's already currently.
I'm requesting we demodify.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
That was my direction.
I understand where you're coming from.
That's
Yes.
my direction.
It comes into focus in light of, what was the address, Banyan?
700, Ryan.
Brian, excuse me, yeah, where you've got wet face, I don't know, how many feet
How many feet?
farther out
Don?
into the water?
Depends on where you look.
About 18 feet.
Somewhere between like 3 to 10
Yeah,
feet off of my.
so we go back to the text of the ordinance, it says measured from the property line, and y'all fell on the wrong side of that one, unfortunately, yeah.
That's right, that's what I was asking, who owned the seawall? I don't.
I don't have an answer to that question.
We'll get to you later. Questions, anybody? So it sounds to me like, Assistant Town Council Dunkel has suggested that we might consider this waiver as long as it was reworded, so you're basically taking into consideration the 3 feet roughly for the seawall. So yeah, as Bob said, you're roughly coming out at 68 feet because you have to take into consideration the seawall. Does that work for you?
Actually, it'd be 67 feet, 8 inches.
Howard, you just said you.
I'm not. That's why I was looking at you to make sure it was the right answer.
Throw a dollar sign in front of it. And then commission.
Yeah,
What is it, 67?
67 feet, 8 inches according to.
So is that all right? We can address this subject to that being revised. Other questions, please, Jim?
No question.
Anybody else? So would somebody like to make a motion and word it properly? And I'm gonna throw that Jimmy Harrison, because I know he's thinking.
You motion to approve the plan as offered with the addition of 3 feet to the.
Add 3 feet to the 64 feet, 8 inches.
At 3 feet to 64 feet, 8 inches.
And I second.
So as a second with Elizabeth George, let's bring this to a roll call vote, please.
Sir, just a moment,
Thank you.
please. Amendments.
You guys cool with that?
Okay, it was very hard to hear, Mr. Harrison.
Will you speak up louder?
Approve the plan as offered with the exception of 3 additional feet, and I didn't hear the rest.
3 feet added to the 64 feet, 8 inch, making it 67 feet, 8 inches.
67, 8, got it. Recorded. Roll vote?
So we, yes, please. So we have a first and a second. Let's bring it to a roll call.
Very good. Mr. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan,
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Mr. Lynch,
Yes.
Mr. Brunel,
Yes.
Ms. Norville,
Yes.
Mr. Franks,
Yes.
Mr. Knott, Ms. George,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mr. Rebels,
Yes.
and Chairman Whitten.
Yes. So thank you very much. That was a great presentation. So this will be memorialized subject to the additional 3 feet. Bob Dunkel, please.
Yeah, I want to bring something to the board's attention. It's kind of a historical significance. We once had a piece of property, not too far from what this one is, where they had ownership of the submerged lands. And what they tried to do is they tried to measure the dock waiver from the outermost portion of the submerged lands. And we went, no, when they wrote that, they're really referring to platted upland property lines. That's why I brought that in part, plus because of the problem that we've experienced over there in Banyan, where there's a significant difference between where the wet face is and where the platted property line is. Thank you.
So thank you. You're still with us. We have another dock. This is a dock permit. We discussed Fort Dover Road previously, and now in front of us again. Alejandro from Hubble again will present, please take the floor, Michael.
Yes, so for this one, we're presenting the owner of 1025 Boulevard, Mr. William. And they wish to obtain a draft permit for private interest of public property. The owner has a 20-foot boat, and it goes to the next. This photograph, which clearly shows that several neighbors have both lived at the estate. Yeah. We go to the next one. That's another photo. If we go to the next one. So here is the dock plans for the whole height of dock, 8 feet wide, parking lot and steps. This is a very similar project to all the addresses on the street, and I'm here to answer any questions.
So again, thank you. This is an area we're well familiar with. One of the issues that does jump out just for continuity is, again, you measure this from the wet face of the existing seawall. So again, that should be from the property line or again, consistent. So I imagine, how you gonna address that? Same thing? You want that?
No, we do it from what?
I'm just, okay. You're okay, I'm for those. Question, please. Very straightforward. We understand that from previous, these docks were destroyed and the owner was given an opportunity to rebuild the dock as well as they have for requirements. And but they did have to again request a permit. Questions, anybody? Questions from the public? Do we have a motion from anyone?
Motion.
Bob Franks, a motion to approve. Second. We have a roll call vote, please.
Yes.
I do have one question, please, if I can. Can I do this since we already started? I have a question. Can we do this since we already have a motion?
You have a question for the applicant?
No, for the team, for Bob, actually.
Yeah.
So are we, there was a question early on about the proximity to the bridge. We have no issue about the proximity of the bridge on this, the bridge is relatively close to this time.
It's not an issue.
Yeah, there's already a dock.
I know that, I just wanted to make sure. Before we move on to the conversation. Okay, let's do a roll call. vote.
Mr. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan,
To win, right?
Mr. McLaughlin. McLaughlin,
Yes.
yes. Lynch,
Yes.
Brunel,
Yes.
Norvo,
Yes.
Franks,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Results.
Yes.
Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
So Mike Lambert. There he is. You know, we were gonna let you fall asleep over there, but come on, we're gonna put you in the hot seat. We're gonna name this the official hot seat.
hot seat?
That's a hot seat. So,
It's not as hot as it was before.
so our friends at Kind Design are coming up from Miami. I apologize for the time, it's just the way it is unfortunately. So folks, this is Mike Lambert. Mike Lambert can explain background, et cetera. There's extensive background, in water, et cetera. In this instance, Mike had been championing and had been in front of various city commissioners, et cetera, about the creation of a chief waterway officer role, CWO. And he's here to kind of explain thoughts behind it, and next steps to that.
All right, thank you, Chair, for an introduction. Just an introduction to the board for those that don't know me. My name is Mike Lambert. I'm the Vice Chair of Coastal Conservation Association Florida, purely a volunteer position. We're a 19,000 member organization statewide. We do about $10 million in fundraising and responsible for millions of dollars in habitat restoration projects statewide in the last 10 years or so. So I'm born and raised in Fort Lauderdale. I think much like this board, I have a lot of concerns about the water quality. I'm a boater, I'm a fisherman, I own a boat. You know, I've seen the water quality over the time that I've been using these waters, at least consciously, over the last 20 some years, you know, degrade and you know, anecdotally talking to fishing guides and other folks that live on the water. You know, I know several on this board, you know, waterfront homeowners. It's a concern to see, I think, the direction in which the water quality in the city has gone. And to be fair, not all of the water quality issues we have is, I think everybody understands, is all borne by the city, right? But I think that there's things that we can do and we may be falling behind on. And I think that water quality and the waterways in general deserve to have an exclusive position, very similar to Miami's chief bay officer, which is purely policy driven more or less, but to have somebody that can kind of be the glue to pull all these pieces together. Now, and that's kind of where this idea came. So for a chief waterway officer, and I'm not recommending that myself be that because I'm in finance and I'm not someone in that position. So we have a clicker, or sorry, say next. You just say that next, please. So I'll close. Yeah. All right. So here we're going to bore you with all these, not a lot, but these are data points that everybody here knows. I presented this to the Sustainability Advisory Board and had great support from them. So I don't want to belabor these points. We all know about our waterways and the economic impact and how important they are to our city. Next slide, please. Again, more things that everybody knows here. I don't think that, again, we have to belabor this. Next, please. So the vision behind this position would be a staff level position in the city that would be under the city manager, would not be under any other, you know, branch, so to speak, or any other department, I should say, like Public Works or you know, any other department for, you know, for that sake. But this would almost, you know, kind of start its own department, its own branch with its own focus. So the vision that at least I've developed behind this, and obviously I would love to have direction from this board as well, would be to kind of be, again, the glue to pull all these things together. I know the city has a compliance department. I know the city has, in Public Works, we have Dr. Gassman, who's a PhD, brilliant, right? I know that we have, you know, we have a company called, the company that picks the debris up out of the water, Aquatic Solutions, I think that we have a contract with a company like with that company. So we have all these different pieces. But I think the public lacks a way to try to pull all these pieces together and have a specific focus on water quality. So again, we've got, obviously a derelict vessel program I've spoken to, Sergeant Travis on. And we've talked about noise ordinances, which is something that's been, a conversation of late in the city. I think that we could also, use this position to help to work on with the public and work with, our marine waterway folks to develop a noise ordinance, because we don't have one right now, or they don't have a way to enforce it, right? For people that live on the river, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Identify and execute on habitat restoration opportunities. So my organization, we work with municipalities, we work with the state of Florida, counties, cities, statewide on accomplishing projects like mangrove restoration, oyster restoration. We've done planned projects in the near lagoons, seagrass projects, all sorts of different things. We have a lot of experience with this. My issue is I think that we need to have a specific person to have a specific focus in the city on waterway quality and waterway quality only. Okay, so there are a lot of opportunities, and I was speaking with Chip Lamarca outside about, working with the state, and our organization does that on getting funding and getting grant funding for doing different projects. There's a lot of nonprofits out there like mine. We're doing $1 million we're giving away this year to 20 different chapters around the state. So $50,000 each, and I'm using $50,000 of that to do a 500-ton limestone boulder project off of Deerfield. That we're going to work with Nova and, speaking about, we were talking about coral earlier about for doing coral outlining. That's something we haven't gotten to yet, but these are examples of different things. Again, I don't have a place for 50 grand in the city of Fort Lauderdale. I'm currently working on doing an oyster study up and down the river, using city fleets basically and we're working on a comprehensive agreement with the city to study where oysters are growing in the river and how that growth looks, how concentrated it is, doing genetics testing on those oysters. And from there, what we grow on these little, catchers that are going to be, up and down the river, we want to use to seed basically oyster reefs or, and permitted areas. That's going to be through FEDP, it's going to be through Army Corps, it's going to be through FWC. In areas that would make sense, that wouldn't be an impediment on navigation, that would not cause problems with traffic or shoal up the river, because I know that those are concerns, obviously. And there are areas that are opportunities for that. And I don't know if you know, but one adult oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water a day. They're really efficient little suckers, and once they're in the water, they don't cost the city anything if we do this right. So the last one I have is collaborate with state and other relevant agencies. Again, I was just talking about that when it comes to permitting and things like that. The chief bay officer in Miami is a big policy driver as well. I don't think we have anybody necessarily in the city that's, at least to me, representing our interests on water quality as strongly as I would like. And this could be another opportunity for that person to be our voice for water quality directly in Tallahassee. I know Chip Marca obviously is, but to have somebody directly from the city, I think means a lot too. Next slide, please. I talked about some of these things, funding opportunities. There's money out there. We just need to put a lot of focus into it. Waterway testing. We know we have Miami Waterkeeper doing that. The problem that I think we have beyond that is we know that there's areas that are high in fecal coliform in the river and other places in Fort Lauderdale. Problem is, we're not doing anything beyond saying, hey, we've got a lot of fecal coliform in our waterways, right? So we're not doing any point of source tracking. We're not doing anything to kind of follow up and try to bird dog where these bacteria are coming from. So that's another thing. I also serve on the infrastructure task force in the city of Fort Lauderdale. So I've become very familiar with how the CIP, works, how budgeting works, what the city's doing with the infrastructure. And a lot of this is obviously, when it comes to fecal coliforms, is infrastructure issues. It's not coming from the Everglades, And then again, when we have compliance issues, you can call the Fort Lauderdale's 800 number, right? You can call them and you can say, hey, listen, there's a boat on Cordova Road that's sanding the whole side and painting right over the water, right? They'll say, okay, we'll get somebody from code out there, but then you're never going to hear anything about it again. There's not, to me, a person or a place of accountability that's going to come back to me and say, Mr. Lambert, it's okay. We sent code out there. We find this boat. Here's what happened. And I think once people start to realize we have this accountability out there and it's organized a lot better, I think it's gonna help prevent a lot, at least more issues that we've been having. So again, it's one position and one focus. This person's not gonna be the boss or the manager of code. They're not gonna be Nancy Gassman's manager. They're not gonna be any of that. They're just the glue to pull all these pieces together. Next, please. So here's a great example. And again, there's enough marine industry experience in here to know what's going on in this one. And I was driving down Los Olas Boulevard and I said, man, I always look at this Viking and I'm like, this is a, whatever, it's probably a 76 enclosed bridge, $7 million boat. And they're sanding this boat over the water. I mean, the brow is sanded, the hull is sanded, right, Jimmy? So that's a big no-no. I mean, look, this is a $7 million boat. This should be in the yard. There's just being at the yard. There's no reason why this needs to happen. So if I want the opportunity to be able to call, if it's after hours, the 800 number, let it go to our chief waterway officer. Chief waterway officer calls me next day. So Mr. Lamberts, we sent somebody out that's working on this. We're going to give you the resolution to this issue. And this behavior is going to start changing when people know that the city is doing something about it. People, as far as the public is concerned, they don't know who to talk to. They don't know who to call. They don't know what to do. But when there's a chief waterway officer and there's somebody that they know that if it's anything water, I don't care what it is, if they see runoff from a construction site, which happens all the time, we saw Los Olas Marine, we see, all the construction sites, we see awful runoff happening. Somebody can call this person, this position, right? And they can get an answer and they can get a resolution to it. I don't think that's something we have. Next slide, please.
Can I ask you a question before you go there?
Sure.
The sanding,
Yes.
where was that happening?
That was on Los Olas Boulevard, on the north side of Los Olas, basically around Nermi or.
Okay, the reason I ask is
Yeah.
because I'm thinking, I believe we've got an ordinance on the books that we prohibit that. Good point.
The last meeting, I think the Coast Guard, did he say that that's their business?
Yeah.
We don't, I'm pretty sure that they can't, the city can't actually, the police can't do anything, but they'll go there and call the Coast Guard will come and they'll get it. They'll get it. That was when Travis gave that whole like derelict, it was like 2 million, that derelict vessel.
Good. So the other thing is, again, you made a great point. We don't know if it's, public at least doesn't know, it's Coast Guard, is it FWC they got a call? Is it, FDP they got a call? I mean, there's all these different moving parts, all these different places to go. And again, if you have that one-stop shop, that person can then delegate out and then be the responsible accountability type of source that can report back. And then again, public outreach. Okay, we saw this boat. Again, here's another example. I mean, this is sent to me by somebody in Lauderdale Harbors, right? And right across the way from him, and he had blue gel coat all over his boat. I mean, and that stuff's ending up. So.
We stopped that.
Yeah, no, yeah.
We stopped that by calling the police. The police came out and talked to him when he was gone. And he had a whole dust over
Yeah.
the whole canal.
Yeah.
And across here was John's, but he also
Yeah.
dusted.
That, well, yeah. So the, beyond having them stop though, somebody like this needs to be accountable. They need to, you know what I mean? They need to pay a fine, they need to, be
Absolutely.
prosecuted, whatever it is. But when people start hearing that the city of Fort Lauderdale is cracking down on behavior like this that's killing our waterways, I think this type of behavior, can ultimately, be reduced quite a bit. I mean, and we're not talking about hiring a PhD here for this position. We're talking what, a $100,000 job, maybe somebody with a marine biology background, maybe somebody with some nonprofit experience. We're talking just kind of a Swiss Army knife, somebody that understands our waterways, but can be organized to put all these pieces together. Next slide, please. Funding. There's the big issue, right? We all know what's going on. This would have been an awkward conversation last meeting, I think. It's a Tortuga Music Festival founder, I think, was here. But, let's have that discussion for just a minute. We receive no money, zero. Actually, no, $500, sorry, for cleanup. And I know this personally because that came straight from the chair of the budget advisory group. We get no money for Tortuga, nothing. So, and granted, I respect Tortuga. I'm going tomorrow. I'll be there all weekend. I love Tortuga Music Festival. My organization is involved. We get about $10,000 maybe from them a year. I think they do wonderful things, but I think that we have bad deals with them, and we have bad deals with Riptide and other things that are going on. Oh, they're not. Okay. Well, we can't hit them. We should get them back and get some money. But anyway, so there are ways I think that if we get creative, we can find revenue sources to fund this position. And again, we're not asking, maybe for a couple hundred, a few hundred grand in a small budget for one employee. I know that things are tight financially, but our waters,
They are changing the fee structure for special events. That's already been addressed, and it's like 3 to 4 times the numbers that they've been charged.
good. I mean,
So this is one person, no staff?
it's one person just to start. Let's prove the concept, because when I met with Greg, Chavaria, our city manager, he said, well, what do you see this person doing from 9 to 5 PM? I said, well, how much time you got? You know what I mean? Because then I've talked to other people and they say, how can only one person do all of this? So
It's true, because.
my goal is
9
to
5
start
would be answering
small,
calls.
prove the concept, and give this person a small budget as well, so they could work on habitat projects. They could work, with organizations like mine on coming up with solutions. There's a guy that's famous for, Colorado for saying, he's like, plant one mangrove, just one mangrove, right? I mean, when's the last time we've seen any kind of significant or any kind of habitat project done, right? We're ripping mangroves out and we're putting seawalls in, and I understand we need seawalls, I get it. I just sat here and listened to I've heard it for years. But there's gotta be a solution or a way that we can replace some of this natural habitat that we're ripping out for the sake of resiliency. We've gotta work on this, right? And so again, this is a sole purpose position on working through the red tape and whatever the bureaucracy is with the state on permitting and other things to figure out what we can do and what's actually, feasible. Code enforcement revenues, that could be one, but again, legally, I'm not sure how that works. That's another opinion we can get for another day. And then again, when we look at budgeting, what's the priority of our waterways in this city, right? Venice of America. I don't have to, I'm preaching the choir here. So I don't know if there's another slide. I think it's been a while since, okay. This is one of the last ones. Miami-Dade County has a chief bay officer. This was a position that was created after those bad fish kills that we had, I think, a few years ago or a couple years ago, when there was the lack of oxygen in the bay. Nobody knew what to do. And this one basically focused on water quality issues, policies, appropriations related to the health of Biscayne Bay. There you go. If we had just that for the city of Fort Lauderdale, I think that we would get a lot done. So I gave you guys like the 24-hour thing. We can prioritize whatever the division of the lineup, the day-to-day that this position does. And then again, they act as a liaison between departments, boards, agencies, stakeholder groups, and all layers of government. Next, please. All right, this I already went through. We're working on, again, I'm purely a volunteer. I love this city, I love these waterways, and I want my kids to be able to, to use them and enjoy them without getting sick. There are a number of things we're doing right now. We're doing an oyster study, which we're going to follow up with a larger scale shell deployment, all funded by my organization. There's a girl named Stacey Brown who's doing a project for her thesis at Nova. And Sistrunk doing water quality monitoring there. And let's see here. I did an oyster study during COVID in 2020 on private docks. Some of you might have heard about it. And that was really interesting. And that was kind of the basis for what we're doing on the New River. That was kind of the concept there. And we're looking at other things, obviously, as well, in addition to this. Next. Yeah.
Question, Stacey Brown, Sistrunk, is the city doing anything, or is that just her PhD?
Sure. Yeah. So I just want the board to know that there are people doing things around here. It's just, you just may not be hearing about them. And then we're working with the city attorney's office to draft a memorandum of understanding. Again, this is the oyster study in the New River using city police. And there's some more information on that. Next slide. That's more on Stacy. That was from the Sustainability Advisory Board. We can skip that. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. We can exit the presentation. This was a carryover from the Sustainability Advisory Board. But what I want this board to know is that there are people that are very passionate and in the community here that understand a lot about these waters. And they don't necessarily, they're not, I'm not a scientist. I have a good understanding of things, but there's people that want to do good things. And I think that this position is a great start on addressing a lot of water quality issues. Step 1 out of 100. It's not going to fix everything, but it's a start.
Sure. When you met with Greg, did he have any indication about this person being
Greg indicated to me that the vision for the position would be direct report to him. And he told me, Susan, the assistant city manager, as much as well. And HR right now, Human Resource Diversity, is working on drawing up the position and creating the position. So it's moving forward. You know, obviously I have concern because we only have Greg for so much longer. And I don't know what the future looks like there, but I presented to the city commission. Commission seems to support it. I don't expect to get all 5 votes, but I think it's reasonable to expect the commission to support it.
Do you know when it'll go to the commission? Because I know there's already been in the news comments about them delaying certain things because all of them are up for election this year.
Yeah, it's slated on the next budget cycle. So when it's gonna go through the budget advisory board and that whole process from, you know, I think it begins soon, or like June or something, all the way till September. So it's on the recommendations from the commission. Whether budget advisory, you know, ratifies it or passes it or accepts it, you know, is another thing, but you know, obviously I'm going around to different boards and different commissioners and looking at our support.
I love the idea. It's a great idea. And as long as it focuses on environmental issues, but the scope of power that this position would have, just a question I have.
Yeah.
Would it be conceivable that this operating officer gets a phone call? Somebody staring out their backyard at Mrs. McGillicuddy's house. And they know Mrs. McGillicuddy, the 90-year-old lady. Why does she have this boat dock behind her house? Would that person be able to come and look at the FL numbers? And then could that enforcement be used to start to police this neighborhood, this town?
I love that question, and the answer in my vision is yes. Okay, so, and that would be again one more resource. Now granted, I don't think that this position would have the authority of code, you know, code compliance of the officers on the waterways, right? But if that person is on the other side of the river and something's going on, or they're on the other side of the city, this person can get in their car and go to Miss McGillicuddy's house.
You sure about that?
Say, what's that?
I said, are you sure about that?
No.
I would assume this person would be using a boat for this job.
They could, or they could jump on with code compliances, you know, people, but they could get in their car. Correct. Or they, you know, or they could get in their car and drive if there's, you know, there's a lot of incidences that can be, you know, reported by car. I mean, we've seen runoff events from the port.
That's environmental. I'm specifically talking about a boat in someone's backyard.
Yeah.
And then somebody using this position as a means for their own personal agenda or policing of what people are doing with the dock in their backyard.
Okay, got it. This person, again, I think.
Not environmentally.
Okay.
You mean like if somebody doesn't like that?
This person
wants to go mess with them because they're renting their dog?
Yes, that's
And says,
exactly.
hey, McGillicuddy needs to go get in trouble because she's been renting her dock space out and it's not
That would
allowed.
be tremendously problematic for this town.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that would be a code thing. If somebody, again, Ms. McGillicuddy calls the chief water officer and
I
says this
know.
person is illegally renting out their dock. Man, you gotta call code, or, you know what I mean, or at least that they can refer that to code, but this is not gonna be somebody that's gonna be taking on that type of project.
How do you know that?
Because we have to draw a position, you know, we have to mandate what they do. We have the option now, being fresh in this position, to draw it up and put that job duty and put those restrictions, and so.
The environmental aspect of it, having somebody on I've cruised these canals for 30 years.
Mhm.
I've sat under these bridges under rainstorms and seen this runoff of heavy metals coming through these drains. I love the idea. I remember Mayor Jack Silent bringing this stuff that he captured off of these bridges. This is a great idea, as long as it stays environmentally focused.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can do that without somebody taking advantage of this position and turning it into their own personal policing force. it just has that ring of potential.
Yeah,
Is there-
Jason, they already have a code enforcement boat. Person now. that's doing-
And how long has that been?
They only got a vote this past year. They only got their vote.
Relatively.
Yeah.
They have
Just
that.
working. So, Bob, please, a couple of points. Insofar as working under the city manager, we already have positions called assistants to city manager as opposed to an assistant city manager. So I really see it tucking into that. I'd like for you to give me your card so I can start to bird dog this because I know we're going through a transitionary period with Greg Lehman. I work well with Susan Grant. I work well with Anthony Fajardo, so I'd like to bird dog that. Next thing is, what, do you know who in the city attorney's office is working on, and I apologize if I'm not giving the right nomenclature, but the oysters and the cleats?
Eric,
Okay, good.
the new guy.
Yes, okay, good.
Yeah, we were, and that's going forward, that's going great, we've been very happy with them, we owe them some things, but we're on the ninth inning of having that agreement. Yeah.
Eric's good people.
Great, yeah, great, we've been really happy.
So, we better move along. We're gonna ask Mike to keep us abreast. Yeah, we're gonna ask you to keep us abreast of what's going on. You gotta guess. I gotta guess. I give a candy.
No, you're on the.
My last candidate. So, my last candidate. So, don't ask. But this is, look, we've discussed this, et cetera. If you have correspondence to send up to us, go through Andrew, so we're sensitive to sunshine laws, et cetera. Let us know how we can support you. See you.
I mean, you're not giving me the whole thing, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to
Get
get.
swimming in. You have no idea what kind of budget we're on.
We're on a budget here.
So. So with it, let us know what we do, send
Yeah.
us correspondence, yeah, sunshine laws, we can't communicate, but Andrew can forward it to us. And get back to you, let us know how we can support you, and so in those sort of ways.
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate it. Anything water quality, again, I'm not a scientist, I'm a financial advisor for a living, so. But anything water quality that this board wants to discuss, or any ideas, projects, or anything, and you guys want me to come in and opine on anything, then feel free to ask, I'm happy to.
So hang around, unless you gotta run, we have Kind Design out of Miami, that this would be a perfect segue from just what we were talking about on filter feeders, et cetera, and if you're formally done, we're gonna introduce them. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all the time.
So, on to.
Stand here or the front?
You go wherever you want. If you're
Okay, there.
if you're up there with your presentation, sure.
The phones are awesome. Let me see it.
Absolutely. So, this is Anya Freeman. Anya is, with a company and her young ladies. They're with a company, I'm gonna read this to you. This was an article that was in the South Florida Business Journal that my wife happened to read some months ago. And it basically says Kind Designs makes seawalls in Miami. Kind Designs has a lofty goal to help coastal cities water flooding caused by sea level rise in a way that does not cause harm to marine life. And we'll let Anya explain this, but basically what they do is they 3D print living seawalls. I understand that Fort Lauderdale has to raise seawalls, as do other areas. So we thought it might be great to present this and see if at some point we can avail ourselves of their services. So with that in mind, Anya, please take it.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you to everybody for hosting us. I'm Anya. I'm the founder of Kind Designs. This is Charlotte. She's the product development lead. And Maddie's our amazing intern. We hope will stay forever, and also Steve's granddaughter. So I have been in South Florida for 10 years. I'm originally from Ukraine. I got the opportunity to come to this country because my dad got a job at the space program. I'm a good immigrant child. I mentioned went to law school. That's how I ended up in Miami, University of Miami, got a scholarship to UM Law. And so I graduated. I was working as a prosecutor, living in Miami Beach, and I started to notice that our house and our city was flooding worse and worse every year. And one year, my roommates and I all got a letter saying that flooding was no longer covered as part of our car insurance. So I just became very curious in this phenomena of rising sea levels and flooding. started researching the space. And so, next one. Let's start learning about seawalls. So of course, this is the first seawall that was installed in Galveston, Texas. And when I saw that there has been very little innovation, construction of these seawalls. And they were problematic for two reasons. One is that seawalls are very expensive for communities. And number two is the environmental impact. Next, please. Just by installing these traditional seawalls in the US, we will destroy 50,000 miles of habitats by 2040. That's like driving from Miami, Los Angeles, and back 17 times. Next. And so we started to think, how do we come up with infrastructure product that's affordable to communities, but is also something that's nurturing for our amazing underwater ecosystem? And so we put together a team, and together we came up with this idea of 3D printing living seawalls. And so, go ahead, the next please. Of course, the way you know that right now, seawall panels, concrete seawall panels are made using these molds. Takes up a lot of space. A lot of times you can't do it on site because there's a pool or other constraints. So you have to find a lot of space, and also takes a lot of time. It takes a day to make these molds and about 3 weeks for them to cure before they can be installed. Our living seawalls, they meet all the same building codes as we'll talk about. Structurally, they're identical, but we have the world's fastest concrete printer. We 3D print the same 10 by 10 panel in 1 hour, and our panels cures in 1 day. And instead of destroying marine habitats, as Charlotte will explain in more detail, but high level, our seawalls also function like a reef. They also mitigate wave energy, and they collect data. And there's no additional cost. There's no green premium. Our living seawalls are price competitive to traditional concrete walls. Rendering what? So let's go ahead, move next. And so our process in 3D printing, you're all welcome to visit us. We're in the Miami River, which is moved to a 50,000 square foot warehouse. We first 3D print the exterior shell using extrudable concrete. We then insert the rebar, whatever the specifications are in the plans, usually it's number 5 every 6 inches. Then we fill the interior panel with concrete. And then we can deliver them by truck or by barge. In fact, contractors can come pick up the panels at our warehouse on their own barge. And then step 5, of course, they can install our panels exactly like they would a traditional concrete slab. So whether it's tiebacks or pilings, they don't need any special equipment or know-how to work with our panels. You can just plug them into any project that already calls for concrete slabs. This is a video. I can't play here with the PDF, sorry. I don't know if you can see my screen. It's at least a guy in the front, but it's a very cool video of how the robots actually print the seawalls. I don't know if you can see, maybe pass around because it's very, very fast. It's looped, you can just pass it on. You can go next for looking. Just the technical specifications, the material. So the material is 5,000 PSI marine grade extrudable concrete. So the only difference between our concrete, traditional concrete, is that we have very small aggregate size. So the concrete can go through the nozzle. So it creates 3-inch aggregates in the mix. It's pH balanced and it's non-toxic. Then the interior fill, we just get it from Cemex 6,000 PSI, again, marine grade concrete. And the rebar is based on the engineering specifications. So we love to use fiberglass, it's much lighter, obviously, better, it can last longer, but we'll also happy to use number 5 steel bar or galvanized rebar. Go ahead. Okay, so Charlotte will explain the 5 environmental benefits of these panels.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so as Anya had mentioned, that our seawalls are not only structural to protect your property, but they will actually help filter and the water quality and create marine habitat. So the first thing is that we actually resemble the roots to look like mangrove roots. It's not just some random design. We work with the Nature Conservancy, and mangrove roots are the most common coastal habitat in South Florida, so we want to mimic that to attract native species. And then just due to the 3D printing process, as you can see the layers from the wall, and it's not smooth. This is called rugosity, so it's this texture that adds anchorage sites for smaller marine organisms to stay on the wall, and especially in places like in intercoastal or anywhere where you have a lot of boat traffic and wave traffic, especially in Fort Lauderdale, it provides space for, anchoring for marine organisms to stay attached, compare it to a rock climber. If you were to climb a flat, smooth wall versus something like this, it's the same for marine organisms. You can go to the next slide. And then as Anya said, the material that, the concrete that we print with, is non-toxic. It's EPD certified, so that's Environmental Product Declaration. And these are European environmental standards, so much stricter than the US. And it's pH balanced, there's no metals, no chloride, no sulfate. So when you put it in the water, it's not changing the marine system. And then because our walls are not flat, it actually helps dissipate wave energy. So you can kind of prevent some of that reflection that you get, especially in hollow Fort Lauderdale canals. You won't have that washing machine exactly effect. And then lastly, we have sensors that we install called our seawalls, and they collect essential water quality data. So 15 different parameters like pH, temperature, salinity, etc. And we can give this to the city of Fort Lauderdale or many other agencies to use to maybe help with the new position that will be hopefully created. And then this is just like ongoing testing that we're doing. So some of this is structural testing, 3-point load testing with University of Miami, but then as well as testing about the environmental benefits that I just mentioned. So one is we're working with the University of Florida to do model wave dissipation. So we know that it dissipates wave energy, but how much compared to traditional walls and walls with riprap. So quantifying that, as well as preventing erosion and resuspension of sediments. And then we're working with FIU to monitor ecological enhancement of the wall. So how much biodiversity are you getting on a wall that has caves and spaces for marine life to have versus just a flat smooth seawall? As well as through sea life attaching, you actually get carbon sequestration. So kind of quantifying that, and then hopefully down the line, there's benefits like some sort of credit you can get for installing a living seawall, not just having to do with biodiversity, but also with carbon. Next.
So this is our first installation. This was done by our customer, Docker Marine, which you may know, Glenn. This was a private property in Miami Beach that have a 120-foot seawall. This project was already permitted for a concrete panel, and Glenn was able to plug in our living panel into the project for installation. So this was the specification, which is this image from the actual plans that were submitted to the state, federal, the DERM, and the city. And this is what we actually created. So you can see identical in dimensions, it's identical in reinforcement, PSI. The only thing that's different is on the wet face, we got the additional root design. This was mid-installation. This particular project, he used pilots, and he also used half the riprap. Glenn's way was to just use half the riprap and then ask for permission after it was already in the water. So we're waiting for the decision from DERM on that right now. Okay. This is an incentive. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for homeowners and government entities to be able to use living seawall panels. This is kind of our dream list. Where the starting place is number one is where we are today, is that we're able to price match concrete panels. So all the environmental benefits, no added cost. So that's how we got started. What we would love is the next 5. Number 1, 2 is eventually, not just, by the way, it's not just for Kind Design, not for our company, but for this category of living seawalls and living shorelines. It'd be amazing to have an expedited permit process. It already exists in other categories, like there's in Miami Dade, we have an expedited plan review program for affordable housing. So if you're doing a project that has to do with affordable housing, you get to the top of the line automatically. So we would love to use that model with a commissioner to be able to receive that for living seawalls. On number 3, the reduced riprap, which is we're waiting to see what happens with DERM. And that's because the panels are not only not destroying habitats, they're creating habitats, they're self-mitigating. Plus, we have 60 more surface area. You unfolded all of the roots, it's actually a much larger surface area. So if we could reduce some of the riprap based on that logic, it would also incentivize homeowners to reduce the cost of the project. Lead points, we're already working on that. I think most of you know cities are like most cities, Florida, Miami Beach are gold certified. To do a project over 7,000 square feet, you have to get these 79 points. Living seawalls count towards those points. So we're just doing a project now in Star Island, and they're finding 5 innovation points for using our living seawalls. APP art in public places, 1.5% of all capital costs of new construction has to go towards public art. We can incorporate art into the seawall. We have such an amazing resolution, like tiny layer size with our printer, that we can incorporate art that count as public art, which these developers have to spend anyways. And finally, looking at tax incentives at the federal level, the way Tesla there's incentive to them, and solar panels there's incentive. We are working on trying to get that eventually for living seawalls as well. And just final slide, this is our amazing team. Just notable mentions, we have Jerry CEO from Icon. Have you ever seen that Icon is the biggest company in the world of 3D prints houses? They're in Austin. So it's similar technology, but we're just printing walls, which is a lot easier. You can actually print windows or plumbing or electric. This robot is perfect for repeating the same thing again and again, which is a seawall. We really have capitalized on it, and both the boring company, which is Elon Musk company, and makes concrete for tunnels. Lots of concrete experts and 3D printers. Okay. And just last mention, our other products we're developing right now. One, living art that I mentioned, retaining walls. We also just as of 2 weeks ago got a lot of requests for tiles. So for lead point purposes, and there's one RFP we responded to in Sarasota, they already have a brand new seawall, and they're looking to make it more sustainable by adding tiles to a healthy existing wall. So we created a series of these 18 by 18 inch tiles you can add to your wall to achieve that. And we do make artificial reefs. We just got our very first government contract with the city of Bal Harbor. Create 25 artificial reefs of 5.5 feet each. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
I have a question. In one of your earlier slides, I saw something that said collects data. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure, Carl. So those are the ones that I had mentioned, that we worked with a company that's actually based in New York. They create these amazing water quality sensors. They're working with solar panels right on the battery power, but they collect 15 different parameters of water quality data. So that's what we mean by collect data. Yeah.
Thank you.
I check all of that. How are you guys calibrating the instruments, on the seawall?
Yeah, so you calibrate them before you put them in the water. You just get a good solution. So like pH solution, forget what the other one was, but you just, it's like once every year, you want to take them and you recalibrate them, then you put them in.
Did they do that?
And the battery
outside
was
or you
so
transport?
they get the same.
They get transported.
Yes, I believe so.
See what I mean?
Part of calibration.
I have to look at the. Let's see. I don't have the memory, but.
Site.
Like,
Then we have to put them on the farm.
Any other questions? Yes,
Are those vertical things, are they filled or are they hollows?
Bill. If you look from the top, but it all gets filled at once. So the roots get filled at the same time as the.
So that's just truly amazing. We actually, I see a hand up here. We had a couple guys that actually have a little experience building seawalls, et cetera. What do we think, guys? What do we think?
I was just gonna ask, what's the longest tunnel that you guys make?
Oh my gosh, so that's funny you asked, because our first order was 12 panels. Our second order we got is 150 panels. And the only problem is that they didn't want 12 and 14-foot panels. So our robot can only reach 10 feet. So what we're doing, well, we have 3 robots. So we're doing for this giant project is having 2 robots next to each other. The first robot brings the first 6 feet, passes on to the second robot, and continues the next. So we have ways to print up to, essentially 18, 20 feet. Yeah, so the second project I'm talking about, we're doing that one with Sidon, you know that company? Javier Sidon.
Are these 3D concrete, 3D printers a special order for you guys, or are these like have been used in other applications?
Houses.
Oh,
But my
oh,
part-
that's what the icon was, okay, they have a robot, they got those 3D printers.
So my partner has been manufacturing robots and printing houses
Yeah.
within Europe for 10 years. We have exclusivity for all seawall applications. It's the only robot in the world who can do this because of the speed that creates the economics. Because of the small layer sizes, that's how we get these amazing designs. No one else has this layers.
Where do you develop the element concrete that you're able to use?
Germany. My core. Yeah, we're dying. That's a huge cost for us is importing material. We're dying to do it locally. It's been very, very difficult to find someone to batch it for us and try mix, batch it locally. So we're developing our wet mix that we can then use locally. But just this is such good material. It's hard to imagine.
So it's dry, what is the extruder add water at the same time?
Yeah, it's water and retardant.
Well, how do you, so some of us have done seawall work recently, and it's kind of the thing that, had we known this existed, you know, we're kicking ourselves saying, we did it. How do the living tiles catch?
So we're figuring that out now, with the RFP we responded to with Sarasota was John Kearns, Kearns Construction. And that was part of the engineering that this team was working on. The design we have now has space for bolts, so you can bolt it in.
Okay.
The other design we're looking at, it's basically pre-install a plate and then you slide the tile on top. And the third option would be a special epoxy, marine grade epoxy.
Questions, guys?
So if I could think of like the Mecca for Fort Lauderdale, because we don't have a lot of natural shoreline left, this would be it. We were talking about perhaps another option that could be to have a plug on there that you could put a natural mangrove in and almost have like a hedge on your seawall. If the state, I think the state allows us now to trim mangroves. I'm not 100% sure, but I mean, this is such a great option for, for one of the only things we really can do when we have seawalls, right? Because of the design and what it allows, to grow and what it mimics. I mean, it's a fantastic thing specifically for the city.
Thank you. We're actually working on a model that has mangrove planterns built into it. Patrick Shearer, an environmental engineer, is very passionate about this idea, came up with this. And the idea is you literally have planterns planted inside, and the size of the planter controls the size of the mangroves. They don't actually grow larger than the top of the wall. With a printer, we have so much freedom of design, which was never before possible with a mold and with a really not.
Questions, anybody, public, anybody?
I know what the sentiment, are you guys servicing?
Yes.
Servicing part.
So now our team would do service in the water once.
So it's not that you.
Of course.
So listen, there's old timers that like to do things the old way. And there's the new timers, and there's some way in between, as I see Robert Washington shaking his head going, I'm not old timer. This is, this is groundbreaking stuff. It's stuff that when we talk about clean water, this is a huge step. I mean, we had Mike mentioned and others mentioned filter feeders. I don't know if this is large enough for oysters and mussels to attach to. But so you got to stay in touch with us. Obviously, I'm not going to get rid of you because my granddaughter works. But it's, you got to keep us abreast of what you're doing. If pricing is commensurate with a traditional seawall, I'm not sure why folks would not consider it. Are there any structural issues, guys, that we would be concerned about? What do you think, Norbert?
I don't know. I said I was just looking at this. I don't know whether you have your own yard, do you make these at, or like a contractor's yard? Because like Fort Lauderdale transportation and stuff, if you make the panels and stuff there, and the cost of transporting it, let's say from there to Fort Lauderdale and stuff over there, and then Fort Lauderdale is a serious problem because there's no way to load or unload barges in the city. So I wouldn't know where you could possibly, you have to take them to a marine contractor's yard in order to have them loaded onto a barge in Fort Lauderdale. I know Miami's different.
We have,
But Fort Lauderdale represents a lot of problems on where you can deliver those panels.
we have three options. Number one is we print on site. We have a 50,000 square foot space on the Miami River. So we print them on site and we can deliver them by truck. Number two options, they can be picked up by barge. So we have a permit for loading onto a barge. Actually, folks have approached us about doing a shipping service for us. So they would use their own barges to do the delivery. Number three, the project is big enough, our robot is completely mobile. It's a mobile robotic arm. We print him on site
Wow.
with a generator. And we give him a bottle. So that's a popular option. You can definitely do that.
Concept is a great idea as far as you're getting growth. That's actually, I mean, you're actually creating the growth a lot faster than it normally would develop on a panel wall of what you're doing and stuff over there. As far as the oysters and stuff are concerned, I can see that. The problem being a marine contractor is putting them in. I said, I could see some serious problems on putting them in, because a lot of times I said, you have to do a little pushing and shoving and everything else with other equipment other than just jetting them. So I said, how many of those things do you get broken off in the actual construction of it?
None. But
None.
when we deliver these, the strongest part of the panel is the root. This is double layer. The first time we delivered this to Doc Marine, if any of you know Glenn, we were handling it so gingerly, so carefully, driving these over to him, and he jumped into his frame, lifted this thing 10 feet in the air and dropped it on rocks. It is extremely durable. During installation, the only place that you can look is maybe at the corners here of the normal panel.
So, really great stuff. I'm sorry we kept you waiting a little bit. What I'm gonna ask you to do, because we're living and breathing this stuff, no pun intended. So keep us abreast, send emails. We have sunshine laws that we can't talk to each other outside this room, but we can forward materials and we keep each other abreast. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I personally wish you the best, and I thank you for stopping by.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. That's really good stuff. So, we're all getting a little tired. We've lost a couple folks. We have old and new business. I'm not sure how much time folks want to spend on this. So I guess my question is, there were a couple of things that came up. One of the things with respect to the reimagining the New River versus the term moratorium was that we would bring it to the forefront. I want to say we gave some traction, get on the wall. We want to look at some of those suggestions that are poorly presented there. Those are kind of some of the ideas we talked about. We had mentioned getting together as a public, including the public. Bob Dunkel suggested that we might do it right here. So we talked about setting aside 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock for public outreach. I don't know what you all think about it, but I'm losing you all right now. So I'm going to communicate this through Andrew and we'll figure out what to do. Barry, you have something you want to bring up? There's a host of issues. I see Bob Franks.
Yeah, if I just got like 5 minutes to show a couple of graphics on the screen there. Okay. It's for the river. Yeah. Okay, yeah, these are a couple of things here. Some of the graphics here about the river. We're talking about seawall, we're talking about getting barges up the river with big yachts. And how do you do it? Well, one thing, let's see, is this showing?
That's a little Florida.
Okay, is there a difference? Did that not come up with a different slide here? But one thing I did was I put graphics here for the 25-foot. And try a different. That's not coming up. That should be coming out. Right here. Okay, what I did right here is I drew 25 feet out here from the seawall. So this shows you that 25-foot contour and gives you an idea what we're looking at right here. All right, so we've got 7th Avenue right here, Performing Arts Center. And we're looking at a 60-foot wide width here of the bridge. So gives you an idea a little bit about how these boats are sticking out here. Couple things here, just get an idea of how that river winds around like that. Go ahead and go a bit on those here.
What's the width of that river? Do you know right there?
Have to get up and look at it. Right. This right here, this shows you here from 3rd Avenue here to Edwards. And here we go. This is 25 feet out from the seawall, 25 feet out from the seawall. And you can see we got catamarans that are sticking a little bit further out. So, you know, one consideration says, all right, well, you can't build a dock more than 25 feet out by permit. All right, if you're gonna put a boat on the outside of that, how much more of the waterway is that gonna fill up? In this particular area, it's pretty narrow, so if you're looking at getting that 50-foot wide barge or that 200-foot long ship, coming up there, you're gonna have a hard time. It keeps flipping around.
You have to be careful, screen's touch screen.
Oh, if I touch it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. Okay, all right, well, actually, this is a pretty good one right here. All right, this is showing you from Andrews Avenue over here to the girls' school. And what you've got right here, there again, you've got the tunnel area. And you need to have this area here for free for turning, that area right there. And this is a choke point right here. This is where you get sometimes people still with the catamarans. You gotta watch out for. Go ahead and go to another one. Okay, all right, this right here, this is Cooley's Landing. Now, I know there was a conversation earlier today about all these boats sticking out the river like this. You got 7th Avenue right there, and there again, you got a narrow opening right here. And when the boat's coming through here, you know, you've got these sticking out. I mean, it's relatively wide right here, but this is nothing more doable than having all these boats coming up like that. That right there, this is the power lines coming across the river.
Oh, okay, sorry,
Yeah.
that's my house. I was just like.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
That's the power lines. Okay, go ahead and go to another one. Okay, so right here, this is
Wiggles.
the Wiggles. This is the Wiggles looking south. Now, a couple of things with this one here is, okay, there again, this is 25 feet off the seawall as best as I can draw it. You've got like 3 different sailboats over here. When you have that barge coming around like this, you're gonna have to wiggle around it, but you got these guys sticking up.
So,
And you gotta,
so that's what I was about to say. We're talking about fixing this stuff, but that's a straight fix right there of code enforcement. That's illegal.
All of
The I didn't know this. I didn't even know it, that you're not allowed to raft anywhere in Fort Lauderdale. Meaning even if you go to the fishing tournament, and you're rafting up on the sands, or not, I guess that's Pompano, but like any of those boat campers, you know, you're not allowed to do that. But no one says anything because it's just for a couple minutes and it's, you know, eating whatever, but that's legal. So
well,
we need to hit that. That's stuff that needs to be hit every time. You got a picture of it.
but you also got these guys that are different, parking like this, and say this is 25 feet out on the seawall, the seawall's actually back here. So they're really kind of sticking out. Fortunately, it's fairly wide there, but there's not a whole lot of room, especially when you're lining up. They can go to another one.
You do, that's
Talking about a potential change.
this is the issue we're discussing now, is that they're talking about changing that, which that, if you literally, all those boats with a line through it are gonna have to move. And that's not happening.
This is the
City's not-
little floor coming down here.
No,
So,
they're gonna use your,
They don't.
position.
All right, what this represents here is a barge that's 50 feet wide, 150 feet long, with a tug on the front and back. So this is 210 feet long, 50 feet wide. This object has to be able to navigate
Keep touching it.
Yeah, that's still a good one.
Keep touching it.
Well, you see another board right
Well,
there.
this is tunnel, like, there again, this is the tunnel, but there's that 50-foot wide barge that's 210 feet long with tugs in the front and back. This guy's got to come through right here. And this whole thing.
And that's not the maximum number that we pull through. We pull in 200-foot boats through there, right?
Right.
Because I know, I asked the number one time and I was like, wow, that many go through? So that 200-foot boat would be almost 300-foot long if barges pull in.
Problem is, Tyler, the barge I used to push is 44 feet wide.
Right.
And so what you've got right here, there again, these yellow lines represent 25 feet out from the seawall. So if you put any kind of a big boat over here by this restaurant, or there again, you go out, well, there's some places here where you can't even put a boat, you're not gonna get the water. But this particular graphic shows you how much the river winds around. You got a little Florida here. It's not a straight shot like the Miami River. So that barge with the barge here with tugs, you've got to navigate all of this.
Bob, do you have any on the west side of the Davy Boulevard Bridge?
Yeah, that's, I've got another for that.
That's not what I use that
Okay,
problem.
this is another one, the house all over here to Lee's Landing. But there again, showing you how windy this is. Go ahead and go to the number there. Touch the screen, Bob. Touch it, all right. All right, you got a little Florida there, and here's another representative of a barge that's 210 feet long, 50 feet wide. And he's got to come around here. There again, these are 25-foot contours. And
Spud down, just get
if I could take a graphic like this, sort of put it there to get an idea of how it would fit. This will tell you to what extent you can allow boats to stick out here in the waterway.
Robert, could you do this with and put a 60-foot wide channel? in the middle, like, to do that, because that'd be pretty neat. to have that.
Well, I could do another set of that with 60 foot.
Yeah,
What essentially, this is Google Earth.
yeah.
So basically, you take a point, you measure across, so let's say this is 200 feet. You set at the 100-foot mark, that's your center. In the center, you go 30 feet this way, 30 feet that way, where's your center channel? So I can draw that. I can go there and make another. I'll draw a 60-foot channel in here and see what we're at.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily. It's not that.
Yeah, but at least it would be the
That would be the center.
But
Yeah.
the thing
How
is,
close it
what-
gets to the yellow line.
what are the physical parameters? How are we gonna be able to get this 210-foot, 50-foot wide barge through here? Are we gonna say we're gonna limit this to 25 feet out? How are you gonna define that? Because what defines this whole thing is getting something like this up and down the river. If you can't get this up and down the river, forget your repairing seawalls and.
That particular spot, you show it right there.
That's
what really shrinks side of the boat.
Well,
They can get up
like
and
I
down.
said, see, when the board, when the guys in the tug come here, they're swinging, and they're coming like this.
That's the
They're
problem.
swinging all the way
Someone's
over
never put a
here.
dock in it.
Which she's doing.
Here.
She's doing. The new owner is putting one in.
Has a tip of that?
He's putting wherever he wants it.
Bob, why
'Cause
don't you do
he's
that?
putting it through code the way he can do it.
This is phenomenal stuff. You know,
I'll be there until I
and,
get
and if you would, send it to me, Andrew, we circulate it to everybody, because this is a great tool. And to make sure that Bob gets it and other guys, et cetera, because this is the one picture is worth 1,000 words.
We got about 3 or 4 more of these and I'll be done with it. Go ahead and give the next picture. Okay, this right here is LMC I-95 right here. And there again, this is a 25-foot contour from the seawall. And you can see the line up here. This guy's sticking out more than 25 feet. But you're coming in here, bridge right here, and look at all these counterweights. It makes it really tough coming around. There's another one that'll show you a little bit better. Yeah, this one right here. if you're on a barge or your big boat, you're coming around like this, you gotta cut this corner. You got land right over here, you gotta cut over here. So you have a little boat over here, there's a barge over here, trying to make that's really tough. And God help you if you got the Jean Queen coming toward you. Go ahead and go to those, there's still about two more. Okay, Davy Bridge right here. This is looking north of Davy Bridge. Sometimes I've seen it where they'll have two sailboats over here. And here again, trying to come around this corner, that makes it pretty tight. There again, 25-foot contour off the seawall there. Go ahead and do another. Okay, this is the way it sounds. Little Fort is over here, yes, Fort. And there again, there's that barge kind of showing you how some of these guys are sticking out here, but this barge, he's gotta make that corner.
I just want to bring up, so we were talking about perpendiculars. Keep that one up, please.
Yeah.
That boat right there, those ones on the corner, the ones down here, we were talking about that we had all perpendicular was a big problem. Obviously,
Big problem.
even
What do you-
parallel is a big problem. And the thing is that we're talking 25 feet. 25 feet is what we allow for structure, and then your boat can go up to 30%.
Right.
So right now, there's no way that the commission will get past going, all those boats have to go. There's no way. They're not gonna get behind it. Those voters will vote them out, period. They won't do it.
I've got another picture. It kind of shows, see if this one here. That's the wiggles again. Go ahead and go to another one. Let's see now. Okay, Little Florida, Davy Bridge, there you got. You got all this to try to navigate through. Go ahead and go to another one. Let's see. Actually, this is. Okay, well, actually, this is a good one there. We got the tunnel here, looking west right here. You got the Riverside Hotel over here. This is where it's really tough trying to cut up through here because you got a big yacht over here. He's more than 25 feet out. We got these guys over here. Sometimes we got little catamarans over here. We're trying to make that cut here, especially you got these boats. You don't have a whole lot of river right here. I don't even know if you got 60 feet between all these boats. But I'm trying to get this block through all that. Go ahead and do another. Actually, let me pick out one. This is right here. All right, this is north of LLC. And what we got here, 25 feet off the seawall. 25 feet off the seawall. This catamaran getting way out. This dock is like 25 feet out and the yacht is sticking out further. In this particular part, it's pretty much a straight shot up the river. This is 158 feet across from seawall to seawall. And between these boats, you've got 74-foot distance. So you can get that barge up and down the river with those boats there, but it's pretty tight. And there again, what happens? You got them coming through. So
it's funny because that, I mean, obviously, no one wants to take out 25 feet of a dock like that. When he's got two boats behind it, but he's probably at code because he has 25 feet of structure. And what do you think that beam of that boat is? 16, 18, 16, 20, 16, 18. So he's if he's 25 and he's, let's just say 15, we're at 40, at 148, he has 47 feet, he can go out. So he's at code. So again, that boat has to go. If we change it to what we've been taught, where people, the things that were talked about, 25 feet period.
The whole dock.
The dock can stay, but nothing can be on it. Right, nothing can be on it. So that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you do that? That's every boat on this canal. There's very few of them I haven't seen a yellow line go through. How do you do that? How do you not have this room filled with 1,000 people in here complaining about not having a boat?
Fire codes with permits.
Well, we're in the fire station, right?
You 3 houses you get, yeah.
I mean, am I wrong? Like to think that way? Because like I'm looking at that like,
I don't know the answer. I do know that from the very beginning, when we discussed the moratorium, a handful of questions keep coming up and put on the wall. And one of those things, what do we do with existing folks. Somebody has a perpendicular dock, somebody's sticking out. Now, if somebody's in violation, they're in violation.
That's a whole nother thing. We have to enforce that.
And if somebody has, and we know full well that on New River that we've granted many waivers, there may be some grandfather nonsense, whatever it may be. If it's existing, it's existing. We're not talking about shutting down existing docks and telling that guy he has to get rid of this situation.
But we
We're
really
talking
are,
about-
'cause we're talking about,
Yeah, but-
we're talking about changing the
But
code.
we're not
We're not
talking
changing-
about changing it
It
to
did,
this.
the stuff we put on there said that to change it to a 25-foot so that the
No.
police officer can see where he's breaking the law and stuff like that.
No, that's not what we're talking about, changing it to 25-foot maximum boat and everything out there. We're talking about having a 60-foot channel in the middle of the canal.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. This is from the seawall out. We're talking about making a channel in the center of the canal. So this is not, what you're thinking is.
Not one size fits all,
This
what we
is
talked
not-
about
not what we're
earlier.
talking about. Having, what you're thinking, what you're seeing and what you're thinking it is.
So
That's
explain
not
to me
what
then,
we're
like, why does it matter about that line then? Those yellow lines? What do we?
It's just showing you where the
It's showing you
25
what
feet is.
25 feet from the side,
So
that's all. It's
like
not
I'm saying is,
that-
there's areas and stuff over there, what we've been talking about is one size doesn't fit all. Some of those wider spots and stuff over there, that line may be a little bit different. In other words, that line that may go out further than that, what I'm reading, other than the 25 feet. He's just showing you where the 25-foot line is now, is where it should be. Some of those,
But in that is
there
more than a
would be a
65 foot.
violation.
But it would
In
say
that is more than a 65-foot channel.
25 feet would only be valid.
Because that's 47 on each side, plus, so 47, which is 94.8. So you're talking 5 more feet on to the 158.
Right, the 25 feet would
So-
only be valid if it's 100-foot wide area for water, then it would be 25 feet out, which is what the code is today. But not 20, like there, that would not be what we're talking about, Jim. That's not what you're imagining, what we're talking about right now is not that. It's not that.
The point of this is to give them perspective and some different perspective. I'll come back with another graphic that shows the 60-foot channel in the whole area. I'll bring that back. Because you guys right now, give perspective.
Tyler, that's basically a straight run. So that one wouldn't be in the problem. The problem is where you're
Return,
making
right.
them turning.
Right, but that doesn't change it. If you still got 65 feet on a turn, you're at code. That was in a turn, you'd still be
Well,
at
they
code.
don't have 65 feet in those
60-foot
turns.
Channel good enough.
Well, it has, you can't go. you can't-
No. Okay, time out. We've opened a Pandora's box.
All right.
We've got a moratorium on dock waivers. We don't address under dock waivers how far out a vessel can be berthed. I envision that when we get done with this, we're gonna have certain segments of there where we're gonna restrict how far out a vessel
Exactly.
can be berthed. Yeah. And so my question is
This is what I'm talking about.
60-foot?
You guys emailed
adequate?
this out. Says
Maybe
eliminate the
that should be a
30%
little bit of a
and apply a
starting point of-
25-foot
of
rule
length
from
of
property line,
vessels.
not wet face.
There are other
That was the
areas with
proposal, but
impervious
that is-
areas where
that would
things
be a
get
code
treated
change.
differently. I see this thing
That's
being
the-
treated
that
in a
would
bunch of
change
different
that.
segments.
That property.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole thing would have to
So
be-
this
It's
was,
not a one-
that's only some of the proposals that they had up there.
Moment in each slide, but that's not what we're talking about.
all
That's not.
Okay.
So my question.
All right.
That's not gonna be.
Sounds sufficient for what we're talking about.
I get that. That was put out before this meeting. When I read it.
I'm waiting for the answer here.
It's good news.
The question is, is 60-foot channel adequate? All right, in this area, okay, this would work.
Yes.
This is not gonna work in Little Florida. It's not.
Oh, wait, one.
Because of the curvatures.
Right.
All right, the other issue is, okay, well, what if you've got a couple of catamarans, one's coming this way and here comes the jungle fleet? Well, it's gonna be pretty doggone tight. If you got a barge coming this way, whatever's over here has got to stop at LMC to be able to pass by. That's why you have to have the passing areas by 7th Avenue, west of 7th Avenue and over the tunnel. I mean, at some point you have to get some sort of traffic, control thing going. That's another consideration if you have a vessel of a certain size. Basically, if you're gonna have a vessel going down the river, he's gonna tow down river usually when the tide's coming in. He's gonna come up the river, well, he's gonna come up the river. I'm sorry, yes, that's correct. If he's gonna go up the river, the tide's gonna come up. No, it's gonna go against the current. But that's another thing, but places, there are gonna be some places where you 60-foot channel's fine, other places where it's not gonna work. I'm just throwing this out right now. These graphics are available. I'll
Please send
the
us those.
60-foot channel, have it available. I'm putting this up here just for discussion, just to say there's not a simple.
It's not a one shoe fits all.
So that's all I'm saying now. We got time to talk about it.
And again, I brought up last time, if we just stop waivers on the new river, does that fix the problem?
No.
No,
How? We're doing it right now. Nobody else is going up, no, everybody's going up the river, right?
You can still berth vessels that go out way beyond that. Consistent with the code.
Correct, but as of today, we have those vessels that are even breaking the code and we are not
No,
enforcing those.
I'm not sure that they are breaking the code. They're allowed to go 30% the width of the waterway.
Correct.
With the exception of the annexed area, which is 33%. Where's the annexed area? Basically Riverland Road out to the city limits. It's a different standard there than it is because that was formerly the county. The county drafted those, different from the city now.
So guys, it's late, we're all tired. Let me bring up 2 points. One, I don't really want to get into it, but I do want to mention the fact that somebody already addressed, something about rafting, illegal. Rafting is not illegal. Okay, we can have Bob address that at the next meeting, et cetera, but rafting in general is not illegal.
It is illegal in dock areas such as Cordova Road. But other than that, in the rest of the city, there is no illegality about rafting.
So
Other than the 30% rule.
Yeah, I think that's what he told me, the police officer. Because I asked him, I was like, really? You can't raft up on someone?
Ask him to point you to the provision that
Yeah.
prohibits rafting. It's only along
I
Cordova.
thought it was like, whoa, what, are you
Yeah,
kidding me?
So we're gonna address it next month because we need clarification. When we went up the New River, with the Coast Guard, et cetera, we saw a couple instances that you mentioned as well, and, Bob did, where you've got not just rafting, but you're rafting 2 catamarans, each with a beam of about 30 feet. So is it illegal? I don't, council says no. Is it intruding too far into the river? Maybe. But it seems to me that, and Travis isn't here, but this all comes back every time to enforcement, so. This, we'll pick this up. And I do want to touch on 2 other things. Our dear friend Patience is here before she falls asleep. Patience, any-
Trying to figure out when the river's gonna be over.
Yeah, and I just, obviously Patience is the single most important supporter of the MAB, and I want to acknowledge your presence, and I assume you have anything you want to say? If you don't, it's okay.
No, I do have something to say. My survey project is in government health and it's over in public works. Can somebody push that thing along?
Your bathymetric study? So who has the ball?
In public works.
Is that it?
What have you found out about the third
Well, she was
Avenue
here.
Bridge?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what I found out, let's see.
If that bridge stays closed for a period of time, there is so much hardware moving here right now. April is a big season where the boats come out of the Caribbean into yard period. I mean, probably can we put is this the organization that suggests letting them dock in the middle or anchor in the middle of the river until it comes up or something like that? I mean, these
By
guys.
state law, we cannot regulate anchorage.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ship coming in in like 3 weeks that's gonna unload a bunch of boats that all are planning on going up the river. I don't know how long this thing's gonna be locked down, but it's kind of weirded me out when that guy said indefinitely, or I don't know what he said.
Well, it definitely means we don't know.
Right.
Is it close to traffic?
Yeah.
I mean, car traffic?
Vehicular.
Right now.
So why don't they lock it up?
They did that for railroad. I think they probably will. They weren't sure if he said they weren't sure if it was working. yet.
Okay, that's great.
So Dr. Erin Meyer is here. I want to acknowledge her because Dr. Meyer has been gracious enough to come to many of our meetings. She has a big time problem at her current property at 700 Bryan Place. She's not on the agenda. We allow her to speak if she'd like to say anything. And again, you are always welcome to join us, but please, you're very patient.
I know it's early, guys. I appreciate you guys being here. We're sort of in like an umbrella, then we're going to story out. As I alluded to earlier, for some reason, our line is set things. So, right now, I live in South Bend, so unfortunately, we bought a house 3 years ago. We loved it. That's almost turned in and disclosed that we have to take the entire house down. So in this process, our plan is to redo our entire seawall, in order to get back enough property up above sea level, but right now, part of it is below sea level. So in doing so, we have a dock for the boat we've got our house right now. And this is the survey that Stephen passing out, and it's small. It doesn't stick out far. It's directly across from Coral Castle and like all of that kind of went down. We're the only people that's been against it, and they heard it. But so now we're in this room where, because our property line is set so far back, with replacing and putting in a new seawall off the code, we won't actually really be able to put a dock back. We're not looking to go out any further than what it currently is. We're looking to replace like for life. We don't impede. I mean, you guys have seen pictures of this area. I'm like, we went over because the permitting first place across. We're directly next to Boyd's Landing, so our goal is to try to figure out a way that we could to try to get through legally to try to just put a like for like dock back on our house. The other funny, not funny, but we gotta laugh now, is that because of starting with the flood last year in April, one of our pylons started sinking, so actually our part of our dock is sinking. And so it's getting fined for it being in disrepair, so we have 90 days to fix it. Or we start getting charged $100 a day, starting on day 91, which I can't actually, because of permitting reasons, I can't go out there and actually do anything to it from like the city, and then also the state's waiting when needs to get permitted. All new. And then also anything exterior of the home also has to go to the historical board, to make sure that all that stuff keeps within the nature of the visual. So I'm not 100% sure what I'm gonna do with that. Again, I guess based on the property line, I don't really own it, so not 100% sure if they're gonna build me. I can't believe it gets pretty good. But that's sort of the conundrum in which Bobby and I are sitting in. We want to do the right thing. We have no interest in making a giant dock. I have a 24-foot dump house. I have no giant boat behind my house. But I do like to have a dock. We have 95 feet of waterfront. That the current design of it, which is also working against us in this thing too, because that's why our property line is so jiffy. But I just kind of wanted to talk to you guys and to try to see if there was a way to figure out a solution. Basically, I had emailed with Bob a while ago, and Andrew, and Steve was very nice to come over to the house to take a look at it. And I'm working with Tyler, Kelly, and I overall permitting and everything. Just want to do it the right way. But we also kind of want to be able to. So I don't know if anybody has it, or, you know, if there's something we can come up solution wise. I know you guys aren't granting waivers. I did speak with Steve about, you know, discussions for possibly with a lawyer, a property lawyer, that for somehow trying to figure out how we can acquire that as a part of our property. Which, I mean, I guess we can go down that road if we need to. Right now, we're working on purely just the seawall, because our house is small. We need the seawall to go in. So we're, you know, putting our dock kind of on the back burner, because we need to keep moving the project with house sections all down. So it's just a matter of like, here, any suggestions you guys have, I would love to hear if there's something I can answer anything from here, I would absolutely love it, we just kind of start with the same topic.
So I went, this started months ago, and the reason I'm taking time with this is because it's nice to have people play by the rules. And Erin and her husband have come to multiple meetings, they've presented, they've discussed, they've listened. She and her husband are both doctors, which you know right away means that they are horrible real estate investors. And I say that with great respect because there are issues there. And when you get to the property, there's a little sign at the front of the property that says Shangri-La. And it is indeed that. It is one of the prettiest, most pristine properties. Unfortunately, it floods, as you know, Sailboat Bend. They are planning to raise the house. It is a small wood dock with a small boat. There previously was a huge catamaran, it's a sailboat catamaran, it's not there. They simply want to use this. I'm not asking anybody for answers. Aaron was kind enough to put it on the table. It's something we all should consider. Bob was gracious enough to also kind of look into it. I don't know what the answer is. I know we're not voting, we're not doing anything other than discussing it, and we'll see what we can do there. But as I had shared, when we talk about extraordinary circumstances of hardship, this is a legitimate. Now, this isn't someone saying, I'm on the intercoastal and I want to have 100-foot boat and all the wake action is disrupting me, et cetera. These are folks no different than us that simply want to keep a small boat here. So if anybody has further questions, feel free, but we will, I'm sure, see this again. Good?
No.
Anything else? Anybody else have anything else before our comments are we have a motion to move on. We have a motion to adjourn, please. We have a second from somebody?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
First, I didn't see it.
Unanimous.
You never looked at it first.
I'm sitting in the middle of the analysis.
Very good.